Chapter 328. Everyone couldn't help but look at Xie Danfeng. Xie Danfeng was also very confused. She waved her hand. "Don't look at me. I don't understand anything." Xie Danqiong nodded. He looked at his sister with a complicated expression in his eyes. It seemed as if he had thought of something. Could it be that this ugly monster is an extraordinary person? Even the 3 stars divine clan gave him face. This isn't something an ordinary person can do. Xie Danqiong faintly felt that he had made a mistake. A huge mistake. However, Xie Danqiong didn't regret it. Danfeng was his sister. He didn't intend to use her marriage to exchange for anything, but the husband she found had to be passable. As her blood-related brother, who could watch his sister marry an ugly man? Luo Kuwu and Luo Ku Di nodded. They looked at each other. Luo Ku Di snorted and said in a strange tone, "You looked down on him, but he saved your family. Humph, this is really a slap in your face." First, Xie Danqiong's face turned red. "Fucking lucky bastard." Luo Ku Di snorted and said, "Let's go." The people of the Luo clan retreated like a whirlwind. The 2 brothers had a lingering fear in their hearts after this incident. They immediately retreated in the direction of the main force. Xie Danqiong also issued an order, and led the people of the Xie clan to retreat. They wouldn't come to this place even if they were beaten to death. Only Xie Danfeng was muttering even after a long time had passed, "That old swindler. He said that he would give me a gift. But he just patted my shoulder and left. What gift was there? I went back and took a bath. But I didn't see anything. I made a bet with that bastard Tan Tan. And I lost everything. So, I'm not famous now. I'm waiting to make up for my losses. But that old bastard just said some beautiful words and left. This is too infuriating." However, the battles with the 3 stars divine clan and the spirit beasts happened from time to time. It was easy to imagine how cruel and desperate the battles were. Even king-level experts had lost their lives. However, Xie Danfeng was only a martial great master. She was rampaging among the spirit beasts. But none of the spirit beasts attacked her. In the eyes of spirit beasts, this Xie Danfeng seemed to have become a powerful and transparent person. "If I can't avoid her, I'll simply wag my tail and run away as soon as I see her." The most amazing thing was that one time, the various great clans found a stalk of flaming sea snow lotus, which was a rare medicinal herb. However, this flaming sea of snow lotus was guarded by 3 7th-grade spirit beasts. Moreover, there were quite a few spirit beasts under their command. So, they had no choice but to confront the 3 great clans. Xie Danfeng arrived at that time. She rushed over in a straightforward manner. The result was that the 3 7th-grade spirit beasts had fallen asleep at that time. And they had closed their eyes when they saw Xie Danfeng. Therefore, Xie Danfeng dug out the flaming sea snow lotus from the area where the 3 spirit beasts were circling. So much so that one of its buttocks was a little too close. Elder sister Xie Dabu actually grabbed its tail and pulled this vicious 7th-grade spirit beast up. Then, she turned it around and made it more convenient for her to attack. Yet, this spirit beast remained motionless. The onlookers from the various families were all dumbfounded and flabbergasted. The flaming sea snow lotus disappeared, and Xie Danfeng also went back. Then, the 3 7th-grade spirit beasts stood up and sneezed a few times. They looked as if they had just woken up from a nap. Then, they slowly walked away. This matter had become an unsolvable mystery in the Kanglan battlefront. Some people even suspected that elder sister Xie Danfeng of the Xie clan had the blood of spirit beasts. Such suspicions had made Xie Danqiong furious. He had killed many people with thunderous methods. Jasper flowers had danced in the sky, and severed limbs had been scattered everywhere. Therefore, the name Jasper flowers had gradually spread in the Kanglan battlefront. Chu Yang slowly rose from the bottom of the lake. The huge corpse of the poisonous flood dragon was lying quietly under his feet. It was getting smaller and smaller. The skin of the poisonous flood dragon was useless. Its internal organs had also been completely destroyed by the tribulation sword. Chu Yang rummaged through its body, and finally cut off a few large pieces of intact meat, and threw them into the tribulation space. Chu Yang had thought that since this guy was known as the poisonous flood dragon, and its name had the word dragon in it, so its meat should be very delicious. However, the spiritual scraping had broken his fantasy. The meat of the poisonous flood dragon was delicious, but it was extremely poisonous. Apart from the yin-yang poisonous dragon eyes, there was no other medicine in the world that could teach it. Chu Yang was stunned for a long time. Then, he finally decided to cut off a few pieces of meat. It was poisonous, but, even though he couldn't eat it, could it be that others couldn't eat it? If someone was not pleasing to the eye in the future, there was no harm in inviting them to a meal with the meat of the poisonous flood dragon. These few pieces of meat weighed more than 1,000 pounds. Chu Yang's eyes slowly brightened. His cultivation had fiercely broken through to the peak of the 7th grade revered sword after he had obtained the 3rd fragment of the tribulation sword. One more step, and he would reach the 8th grade. After that, he would become a sword king. Even Chu Yang himself felt that this speed was unimaginable. It had only been a year since he had been reborn. Chu Yang's eyes brightened. He was close to the surface of the water. Chu Yang's spirit was lifted. He was about to break out of the water when he suddenly saw the silhouettes of people on the surface of the water. It seemed that many people were looking for something on the surface of the water. Chu Yang frowned. He knew that these people were definitely looking for him. Speaking of which, he had disappeared underwater for a few hours. It was truly a little unimaginable. Chu Yang had an idea. He silently swam from the depths of the water towards the small island in the middle of the Lotus Lake. He quietly landed on the small island. Then, he used his martial power to dry his clothes. Then, he lazily lay down on the grass and slept soundly. Yin Wu Tian couldn't find king-level expert Jun for a long time. So, he became more and more alarmed. The range of his search was getting bigger and bigger. Beads of sweat were seeping out of his forehead. How angry would the 5th Prime Minister be if he drowned in the lake? He slowly approached the center of the lake. Suddenly, someone tilted his ear and suspiciously asked, "What's that sound?" Hey! Yin Wu Tian was startled. He immediately condensed his martial power. Snore, snore, snore. It seems that someone is snoring. A martial great master laughed out loud. This guy's snoring is so earth-shattering. Yin Wu Tian's face was as cold as water. He listened carefully. Then, he suddenly stood up straight and pointed at the small island. "Look over there." Snore, snore. Yin Wu Tian was still 70 or 80 feet away from the island. So, he flew over and looked in the direction of the sound. Snore, snore. The sound of snoring was unceasingly heard. Yin Wu Tian finally found the center of the small island. Then, he focused his eyes on the dense grass. Yin Wu Tian felt as if his lungs were about to explode from anger. Even his scalp felt numb from anger. His hair stood erect. His subordinates cautiously looked over. They saw that the missing or drowned king-level expert Jun. He was lying on his back in the grass. His face was calm. His eyes were closed. He was breathing in and out rhythmically. Snore, snore. As he breathed, this somewhat outrageous snoring sound came from his mouth. Yin Wu Tian clenched his teeth and clenched his fists. He then walked forward with large strides. Snore, snore, squeak, squeak. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This king-level expert Jun not only snores, but also grinds his teeth. Look at this sound, it makes people's hair stand on end. Yin Wu Tian stood in front of king-level expert Jun. He couldn't help but sigh. I couldn't find him anywhere. And, I was so anxious. So, this guy had secretly found a secluded place to sleep. But, who is to blame for this? Yin Wu Tian sighed. He slowly squatted down and tried to wake him up. However, king-level expert Jun murmured something in a daze at this time. He turned over and slept on his side. His buttocks were facing Yin Wu Tian's face. Yin Wu Tian snorted and stretched out his hand to push him. However, at this time, bang, fuck. Yin Wu Tian quickly bounced up and jumped 70 feet away. He tightly covered his nose. It turned out that this guy actually let out a fart at this very moment. The experts of the Golden Horse Riders department had strange expressions on their faces. They wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to. They couldn't help but laugh. The first glimmer of dawn had appeared in the sky. Everyone's eyesight could clearly see that the moment King-level Master Yin squatted down, the distance between him and King-level Master Jun's buttocks was very close. A loud bang was heard. Everyone could clearly see that the hair on King-level expert Yin's forehead had been blown away by this sudden burst of gas. This scene was very clear and spectacular. Everyone's faces were serious. However, their bodies were slightly trembling. They were trying hard to restrain themselves from laughing. Bastard! Yin Wu Tian felt humiliated. He angrily roared. Is there thunder? King-level expert Jun sleepily asked from the underbrush. He raised his head and looked left and right. Then, he slowly crawled up. He said in a puzzled manner, "Why are you all surrounding me?" Everyone was depressed. "Why are we surrounding you? Do you think we want to surround you?" Yin Wu Tian walked over with large strides. His face was filled with fury. He was about to curse out loud. However, he didn't have time to speak. He didn't have time to get angry. King-level expert Jun suddenly flew into a rage. Moreover, he flew into a thunderous rage. King-level expert Jun fiercely jumped up and cursed, "Fuck your uncle. Yin Wu Tian, you are a bastard who deserves to be chopped into pieces. You are a bastard who neglects his duty. I asked you for people last night. You didn't say anything to me. Ah, look at you now. Motherfucker, you brought a group of people to bask in the sun with nothing to do." King-level expert Jun became more and more angry. He stomped his feet and roared. "Fuck Yin Wu Tian, I want you to give me an explanation for this matter. Otherwise, I will go and look for Diwu Qingru. Fuck. Our bamboo people have never been treated so coldly, this kind of perfunctory treatment. You are extremely daring. You are brain-dead. You're simply a scoundrel." Yin Wu Tian should have been furious. However, he jumped up before Yin Wu Tian could speak. Chapter 329. You what? You are in the wrong, aren't you? You can't speak, can you? King-level Master Jun pressed on. He coldly looked at Yin Wu Tian. Do you feel sorry for me? Do you feel that you can't explain yourself to Diwu Qingru? He saw that Yin Wu Tian had opened his mouth. So, he suddenly roared like a thunderclap. It's useless to say anything. Yin Wu Tian, what should you do? What should I do? Yin Wu Tian is confused. What am I in the wrong? Why can't I explain myself? You are the one who went missing, okay? Why are you talking about it now as if it's my fault? Besides, who do you think you are? You want me to listen to your commands? You are the only one who can speak good and bad words. Surnamed Jun. Don't bully people too much. Yin Wu Tian cried out in tears of blood. Bully people too much? Humph. Yin Wu Tian, come with me. Come with me to see Diwu Qingru. I want to ask him how he arranged you. You don't want to cooperate with me. How can I bully people too much? This fucking inverts right and wrong. You are the best in the world when it comes to confusing black and white. King-level Master Jun angrily said. Yin Wu Tian was so angry that he felt dizzy. His body swayed, and he almost fell to the ground. He regained his consciousness after a long time. He muttered, I fucking want to vomit blood. I fucking want to vomit blood. He suddenly asked, where is he? King-level Master Jun has disappeared. Well, King-level Master Jun left in anger when King-level Master Jun was meditating. He said that he was going to find the Prime Minister to reason with him. A person next to him said cautiously. He wanted to say, you were confused by your anger. But, he didn't dare to say it after thinking about it. I'm so angry. Yin Wu Tian coughed, and spat out a mouthful of blood. This bastard is going to find Prime Minister Diwu to reason with him? How can he be so thick-skinned? Chu Yang went ashore, and saw Jing Meng Hun rushing towards him. King-level Master Jing, your King-level Master Yin is too outrageous. Chu Yang made the first move to gain the upper hand. So, he started to complain. Jing Meng Hun obviously had an urgent matter to attend to. But, He had no choice but to put on a smiling face as he listened to Chu Yang's nonsense. I'm sorry, Brother June. The Prime Minister is making arrangements for the expedition. I've come to gather the manpower. Jing Meng Hun anxiously stamped his feet. He was almost begging for mercy. Go to war. Chu Yang was startled. What war? Let's go to Iron Cloud. Jing Meng Hun said, the Prime Minister will personally lead the expedition. This time, we must crush Iron Cloud into powder. Chu Yang was stunned. Diwu Qingru wants to go to war now? What's going on? Why was it so different from his previous life? He clearly had to wait for 3 years. Jing Meng Hun quickly walked past him while he was still in a daze. He then shouted towards Yin Wu Tian and the others who were still on the island, come back. Come back quickly. There's an emergency. Chu Yang shook his head and shook away his unrealistic fantasies. He bitterly smiled in his heart. It seems that this expedition isn't a lie to me, King of Hell Chu. It's a real expedition. In other words, Diwu Qingru had changed his mind. Chu Yang didn't know why Diwu Qingru had changed his mind, but he knew that he didn't have time to delay. He had to return to Iron Cloud immediately. He had to face Diwu Qingru's stormy sea of attacks together with Tai Biu Tian. He had to struggle to survive in the face of absolute adversity, and fight for a slim chance of survival. However, he still had 2 matters to attend to before returning to Iron Cloud. The first matter was Du Shiqing's matter. The second matter was Diwu Qingru's expedition. It was a military stratagem. If he could get his hands on this, he would be able to take the initiative for a while. Chu Yang shook his head. He no longer entangled himself with Jing Meng Hun and the others. His figure quickly disappeared. Jing Meng Hun and the others went ashore, but Chu Yang had already disappeared without a trace. Why did he leave? Isn't he looking for the lotus root? Jing Meng Hun was somewhat puzzled. Big brother, he didn't really go to look for Prime Minister Diwu, right? Yin Wu Tian asked carefully. Let's go back quickly. Jing Meng Hun immediately made a decision. Jing Meng Hun had been scolded by Diwu Qingru for half the night. He was battered and exhausted at the moment. His face was full of knots. If this king-level Master Jun were to cause any trouble in front of Diwu Qingru's anger would be at its peak. He would be most dissatisfied with the Golden Horse Riders department. Therefore, Jing Meng Hun and Yin Wu Tian rushed back as if their lives depended on it. Chu Yang entered the provincial capital like a meteor. He took 2 turns, and arrived at the door of a shabby small courtyard. He looked around and saw that no one was around. Then, he gently knocked on the door. He paused, and then knocked twice. He paused, and then knocked 5 more times. 1, 2, 5. This was the agreed-upon secret signal. The door creaked open. An old man stuck his head out. Who is it? It's me, Chu Yang said as he entered. No need to be overly courteous. He entered the room. This was the most secretive stronghold of Iron Cloud's royal family in Iron Cloud. It was an absolute secret. The old man who had opened the door was born and raised in Great Zhao. He had been there for 3 generations. Only the highest authority of Iron Cloud knew of his existence. Chu Yang would not use this line unless he had no other choice. This was because the military strength of this generation had seriously deteriorated. Once exposed, it would be a dead end. There was an old man sitting in the room with a distressed face. After confirming Chu Yang's identity, he called out, "What should we do now?" This distressed old man was none other than Du Shiqing in disguise. "Don't worry. Leave everything to me." Chu Yang smiled. "Relax. What I want to ask you is, what are your plans for the future?" "Plans?" Du Shiqing sighed and said, "What plans can I have?" Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, "Senior Du, I have 2 proposals. First, after I take care of things, you and your family can live here. Diwu Qingru and Ma Tu will go to war. As long as Diwu Qingru is not in the province, you will be safe here." "What's the second proposal?" Du Shiqing raised his head. "Second, once the war starts, there will be heavy casualties. Senior Du can also join the Iron Cloud army. You can help take care of the wounded. However, this path is more difficult. Plus, You will have to cross thousands of miles of border. It is also more dangerous. Chu Yang said casually. If that is the case, I choose the second option. Du Shiqing said resolutely. He sighed deeply. Du Shiqing, oh Iron Cloud too much. If I can make up for it a little. I will make up for it a little, all right. Chu Yang pondered for a long time and finally nodded his head. Immediately, Chu Yang entered the inner room. He opened a secret door and went down. Down below, there were two unconscious young people. A woman in her 40s was looking after them. This woman was Du Shiqing's wife. Rest assured. Well, Minister Du is here. He will take care of this matter. You don't need to worry. Du Shiqing followed closely behind. Divine Dr. Du and my wife can go out first. Leave this place to me for now. Chu Yang said casually. Yes, but I don't know how you are going to take care of this matter. Du Shiqing was about to leave, but he was still worried and asked. I will make them forget a part of their memory. And this part of their memory will be forgotten a long time ago. Therefore, as long as they wake up, Senior Du will be very courageous. This is because they will not have any memory of their past. Chu Yang turned his head and looked at Du Shiqing. What does Senior Du think? Forget about them. Du Shiqing stood there in a daze. This was a good idea. His son and daughter-in-law had been thoroughly brainwashed by the Golden Horse Riders Department. Their gratitude for Diwu Qingru's hegemony was also deeply ingrained. Once they woke up, it was likely that they would be willing to sacrifice their own family for the sake of righteousness. Directly losing this part of their memory was, of course, the best. However, Du Shiqing was also a doctor. How could he not know that this matter was very dangerous? If he was not careful, his son and daughter-in-law would turn into idiots. Are you sure? Du Shiqing asked nervously. I will use the soul-seizing great technique. Chu Yang said softly. Ah, that's good, that's good. Du Shiqing's heart was at ease. The soul-seizing great technique was an extremely evil martial art. It could make a person unconsciously open up the deepest part of their heart and do whatever they were told to do. However, this martial art was easy to learn but hard to master. It was originally something that the Yarman's senior bailiffs learned to interrogate criminals. Of course, this was the worst way to use it. As long as one's mental strength exceeded an ordinary person's, the soul-seizing great technique would not work. However, Du Shiqing was a divine doctor of his generation. Naturally, he knew the true power of the soul-seizing great technique. The main function of the soul-seizing great technique was to control. When it was practiced to a high level, one could unconsciously control a person's mind and turn them into a puppet. In Jianghu, high-level martial artists often used this technique to kill people and steal treasures. However, it was only after the opponent had lost the ability to resist. This martial art also had the ability to erase memories. The only downside was that he could not selectively erase memories. He could only kill them all at once. Therefore, Chu Yang had the saying, everything has to start from the beginning. After Du Shiqing left, Chu Yang immediately got busy. He lit up oil lamps in several conspicuous places. Under each oil lamp, he lit an incense stick. Then, he placed a large mirror on the wall. Immediately, Chu Yang sat down cross-legged and took a deep breath. Then, he closed his eyes. Slowly, the atmosphere in the room became strange. The smoke slowly became dense. Chu Yang's body became steaming hot as if he was on fire. The surface of the mirror had become hazy. Chu Yang suddenly opened his eyes and slapped the head of the young man who was lying down. After a long time, the door to the secret chamber opened. Chu Yang wiped his sweat and walked out. Du Shiqing immediately went forward to greet him. However, he was suddenly hit by the billowing smoke. How is it? Chapter 330. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Du Shiqing was moved to tears. He only had one son in his life. He raised him painstakingly, but because of him, he was captured by Diwu Qingru and trained as a tool to deal with him. He was a father, but his son had been brainwashed to the point that he would kill him with a knife at any time. How horrible and sad was this? Even though he had lost his memories, he had to start over. With a good physical foundation, it was not a problem. Plus, this time, even his daughter-in-law's soul was stolen. There was no need to think about it. It was dangerous. Their cultivation was not bad, and their mental strength was very high. I almost couldn't control it. Chu Yang wiped his sweat. The process of stealing their souls was very simple. It was just that Diwu Qingru's imperialism was deeply rooted. Chu Yang almost reached his limit before he could successfully erase their memories. After that, he really broke out in cold sweat. He discussed the escape route with Du Shiqing for a while. Then, they finalized all the details. They agreed on the rendezvous point, the signal, and so on. Then, Chu Yang silently raised his voice. There was only one step left. That was Diwu Qingru's military intelligence. Since his rebirth, Chu Yang had always been wary of Diwu Qingru. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he did not want to face Diwu Qingru head-on. Even though he had come to Great Jiao, even though he had met Diwu Qingru twice, Chu Yang still felt a sense of danger. Diwu Qingru's eyes seemed to be able to see through everything. It was as if he could see through him at any time. In both his previous and current lives, Chu Yang knew that Diwu Qingru did not know martial arts. But now, he did not believe it. No one could see through Diwu Qingru. This person could be said to have deceived everyone. If he had a choice, Chu Yang would rather go into the palace alone than face Diwu Qingru. But this time, he had no choice but to go. Iron Cloud was not ready yet. The number of troops they had gathered did not exceed 1 million. But Great Jiao could mobilize 4 million at any time, and all of them were well trained. The most frightening thing was that Diwu Qingru had been training the second echelon. The second echelon's numbers were in the millions, not to mention the fact that they were recruiting new soldiers. Once the battle began, with such a huge disparity in numbers, coupled with the fact that one side was well prepared and the other side was in a hurry to fight, the outcome of the battle was obvious. It was a one-sided battle from the very beginning. Therefore, Chu Yang must get the military strength. This was the only thing that could be used against a million-strong army. Only this. Therefore, even if Diwu Qingru's Cheng Prime Minister's manor was a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, Chu Yang had to barge in. Perhaps this was a man's responsibility. Although there were things he couldn't do, there were things he had to do. Another day passed. At night, dark clouds covered the sky and a strong wind blew. Not long after, bean-sized raindrops began to fall. The rain became heavier and heavier, slowly forming a curtain of rain in the sky. Chu Yang secretly exclaimed that the heavens were helping him. He jumped out of his hiding place and disappeared in the boundless rain. Diwu Qingru only slept for 3 hours before he got up. He sat alone in the study room and ordered that no one was to disturb him. The sandalwood chair was placed in front of the map. Diwu Qingru propped up his chin with one hand and looked at the map alone. In his mind, the mountains and rivers of the entire map had already been recorded. He sat motionless. No one knew that in his mind, a fierce battle of attack and defense had already begun. Every city, every land, every mountain, every river, every general, every troop, every commander. The enemy's military strength, the enemy's generals, and even the characters and habits of the generals on both sides were closely compared. At this moment, Diwu Qingru's brain was an extremely complex high-end computer. Even some of the military's computers couldn't calculate it so thoroughly. Diwu Qingru wanted to conclude this war before he went to war. This was Diwu Qingru's ability. In this world, there was no second person who could make such a meticulous plan. Only Diwu Qingru. Diwu Qingru sat quietly and slowly closed his eyes. The heavy rain outside seemed to provide him with an endless supply of spiritual energy. For a long time, he didn't make any movements. The tea on the table had already turned cold. Sigh. Diwu Qingru pondered for a while. Then, he finally sighed. No matter how one looked at it, Great Jiao had no possibility of losing this war. But Diwu Qingru still felt that it couldn't be said to be perfect. Tai Bu Tian may personally lead the army when the time comes. Dealing with Tai Bu Tian is already possible. Tai Longcheng's habits are like the back of his hand after so many years. He may be difficult to deal with, but at most, we just have to pay some price. But only King of Hell Chu. What kind of attitude will he take on the battlefield? Diwu Qingru muttered to himself. After fighting with King of Hell Chu for so long, Diwu Qingru didn't dare to underestimate this opponent. This person was capable of martial arts. When it was time to be ruthless, he was unimaginably ruthless. When it was time to make a move, he didn't hesitate. But when it was time to give up, he would give up. He didn't hesitate. He was good at conspiracies and tricks. Diwu Qingru wouldn't believe that such a person didn't know how to fight on the battlefield. Diwu Qingru wouldn't be worried if King of Hell Chu went to the battlefield with his Bu Tian pavilion to carry out intelligence and assassination activities. That was because these things were powerful, but they couldn't determine the overall situation of the war. What he was worried about was, if King of Hell Chu also took command of the army, then it would be a huge pressure on his side. Diwu Qingru was confident that he could suppress Tai Longcheng and Tai Bu Tian with his own strength. But he didn't have a suitable candidate to deal with King of Hell Chu. If he dealt with King of Hell Chu, then he would be unknowingly letting go of his control over Tai Longcheng and Tai Bu Tian. His many years of research had been rendered useless. His subordinates had outstanding military exploits. Every one of them was a peerless talent. But they were still inferior to Tai Longcheng and Tai Bu Tian. The outcome of this war was bound to be optimistic. But Diwu Qingru knew that he would have to pay a heavy price. Tai Longcheng was an invincible military god. Tai Bu Tian was a strategist. And King of Hell Chu was a crafty and eccentric genius. The combination of these three people wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Diwu Qingru thought that the ideal time would be 2 years later. At that time, he would have finished his preparations. His agreement with the prairie wolves and his cultivation of them would be the most effective. But Ironcloud's huge loss of spies had thrown Diwu Qingru's plans into chaos. Moreover, there were several sudden changes in the continent's capital, which led to a complete falling out with the royal family. This was even more unexpected. Then, there was a huge disturbance in the continent's capital. And this caused Great Zhao's morale to plummet. The continent was the capital of the nation. Then, the most important thing was, Diwu Qingru realized that the mysteries of heaven had been mixed up since the birth of the first fragment of the Tribulation Sword. Moreover, there was a faint sign that it was shifting. Last night, heaven and earth had changed. And the sky had been dyed red with blood. This made Diwu Qingru feel that there was no time to delay. The phenomenon of the heavens was illusory in the eyes of most people. But Diwu Qingru knew that there was a vast amount of knowledge in it. And it was indeed foreshadowing something. Therefore, Diwu Qingru knew that if he didn't act quickly, the situation would be reverse. It was difficult to say that the changes brought about by the Tribulation Sword would not affect the situation of the continent. But Diwu Qingru realized that there was one person who had become a variable when it came to formulating a strategic plan. King of Hell Chu. King of Hell Chu's existence was like a nail in his heart. No matter how he planned, he was still like a whale in his throat. It was very unbearable. Diwu Qingru looked at the time. The sky had already darkened. He had unwittingly sat for an entire afternoon. Diwu Qingru sighed and stood up. He had thought so much that his head hurt. So, he rubbed his temples and walked out. Prime Minister, Lord Jing has been waiting for you for a long time, an attendant reported. Oh, let him in, Diwu Qingru said casually. King-level Master Jun has disappeared. Diwu Qingru frowned and said, is he not looking for Jie Lianzu? Yin Wu Tian and Jing Menghun looked at each other in dismay. Diwu Qingru pondered. He obviously came to look for Jie Lianzu. So, why did he suddenly leave? Did he find it? No. According to Yin Wu Tian's report, he shouldn't have found it. You mean, your boat was washed away by the evil water? At what time? What time was it? Diwu Qingru asked. It should have been. Yin Wu Tian replied cautiously. However, a strange phenomenon occurred after a while. The sky was clear for thousands of miles. Lightning flashed and thunder rolled. Diwu Qingru's complexion turned ugly. Then, it turned deathly pale. His eyes stared straight as he muttered, you were washed away. and then a strange phenomenon occurred. The sky was clear for thousands of miles. Lightning flashed and thunder rolled, and then king-level Master Jun disappeared. He didn't look for Jielianzu. Jielianzu? Jielianzu? Diwu Qingru's body suddenly shook, and he jumped up from his chair. Large beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on his forehead, and his complexion turned green. Prime Minister, what's wrong with you? Jing Menghun and Yin Wu-Tian were startled. Diwu Qingru straightened his eyes and sat back on his chair. His complexion was extremely ugly. He took deep breaths, and suddenly squeezed out a few words from the gaps between his teeth. Knotted lotus root. Knotted lotus root. What a good knotted lotus root. Duqiu. Duqiu. You tricked me. You tricked me. Ah. Diwu Qingru heavily slammed his palm on the purple jade tea table beside him. And, the entire purple jade tea table silently collapsed with a bang sound. Then, it scattered into a pile of sparkling, shattered jade fragment. Chapter 331. Jing Menghun and Yin Wu-Tian opened their eyes wide as they sucked in a mouthful of cold air. They looked at the pile of jade fragments as if they had seen a ghost. Cold sweat poured out of their bodies like a small river. This is the Prime Minister. Didn't the Prime Minister not know martial arts? What's going on? This is purple jade. This purple jade is 10 times harder than granite. Even a king-level expert like Jing Menghun wouldn't be able to smash Diwu Qingru to such an extent with a single palm strike, let alone the others. Moreover, the difference is too great. Is the Prime Minister a peerless master? Emperor-level master? Jing Menghun and Yin Wu-Tian didn't dare to utter a single word in the face of Diwu Qingru's vigorous anger. They stood there with their heads lowered. They didn't even dare to breathe. Humph. Diwu Qingru coldly snorted. He stood up and suddenly laughed out loud. He then roared, "You played me like a fool. You played me so thoroughly. You're the first one to do so." He panted heavily. His eyes were like purple lightning, sweeping back and forth with an extremely sharp edge. His gaze swept over Jing Menghun and Yin Wu-Tian. The two of them felt as if their skin had been cut open by his sharp gaze. Diwu Qingru restrained his imposing aura after a long time. He then slowly sat down. "Prime Minister, are you okay?" Jing Menghun asked cautiously. "I'm fine," Diwu Qingru said in a dull voice. He then looked up and sighed. "I let go of such a great opportunity that only comes once in 10,000 years. What a pity. What a pity. Only comes once in 10,000 years. This king-level Master Jun, what kind of king-level Master Jun is he?" Blue veins popped out on Diwu Qingru's hands as he tightly grasped the chair's handle. He coldly snorted and said, "He's clearly the sword master of Calamity Sword." "What?" Jing Menghun and Yin Wu-Tian suddenly felt as if thunder had struck their ears. They turned pale with fright and their bodies started to sway. "Master of Calamity Sword." Yin Wu-Tian stammered. He felt dizzy. "Oh my God. I've been with Master of Calamity Sword for such a long time." Not only that, he was even scolded by the Calamity Sword Master. Yin Wu-Tian's anger suddenly disappeared. In fact, he even felt a faint sense of glory in the depths of his heart. The Master of Tribulation Sword. Mother, that is the Master of Tribulation Sword, the extremely mysterious Calamity Sword Master who rules over the entire Double Heavens continent. What knotted lotus root? He was searching for the Calamity Sword. The third fragment. Diwu Qingru's saliva almost sprayed on Yin Wu-Tian's head. He took away the third fragment of the Tribulation Sword right under the eyes of an idiot like you. Diwu Qingru's self-cultivation could be said to be at the peak of perfection. Normally, he would not lose his self-control. But today, he directly became ferocious. There was no other reason. Calamity Sword. Calamity Sword Master. This was the Tribulation Sword Master who was related to the fate of the upper three heavens ruling clans. He had appeared and disappeared in front of him. Moreover, he had taken away the third fragment of the sword. So, the so-called young man of the Yi clan that you brought to the treasury that day is undoubtedly the Tribulation Sword Master. Diwu Qingru hurriedly paced back and forth in the room, This matter is a trap set up by Yu and the Tribulation Swordmaster. Jing Meng Hun and Yin Wu Tian looked at each other in dismay. Prime Minister, if you have a way, you can go to the upper three heavens and ask Yu for an explanation. Jing Meng Hun bravely proposed. What kind of nonsense is this? The upper three heavens is going to change dynasties after the birth of the Calamity Sword. Yu can't wait for the great clans of the upper three heavens to be destroyed so that other clans, such as his, can rise to the top. How could he tell me? Besides, Yu has already climbed up the Tribulation Swordmaster's thigh. As long as the Tribulation Swordmaster doesn't die, he will succeed sooner or later. Then, Yu will ascend to the top. How could he reveal any information to me? You want me to ask? Isn't that the same as asking someone to slap me on the left side of my face? Isn't that asking for trouble? Diwu Qingru roared. Jing Meng Hun hurriedly shrank his neck and said nothing. However, the information revealed by Diwu Qingru's words made Jing Meng Hun's heart beat wildly. Oh my God! Prime Minister is a member of one of the great clans of the upper three heavens. This knowledge made Jing Meng Hun feel even more reverence for Diwu Qingru. Diwu Qingru's emotions calmed down after a while. He said, "It's over, never mind." Diwu Qingru raised his head and looked at Jing Meng Hun weakly. He said, "You guys go out first. Wait for a while." Jing Meng Hun and Yin Wu Tian hastily withdrew from the room. Diwu Qingru closed his eyes and tried hard to calm the waves in his heart. He picked up a pen, wrote a letter, and sent it out. He was silent for a while. Then, he stood up and said, "You guys come in." His voice had regained its usual elegance and calmness. The matter of the Tribulation Swordmaster had a big impact on Diwu Qingru. However, he had extraordinary willpower. So, his mood had completely calmed down. However, Diwu Qingru didn't know that he had misunderstood something. Others didn't know who king-level expert Jun was. However, Yu clearly knew that he was Chu Yang, King of Hell Chu. However, Yu didn't know that Chu Yang was the Tribulation Swordmaster. Everyone was kept in the dark about this matter. The only person who knew about the appearance of the Tribulation Swordmaster was Diwu Qingru. However, Diwu Qingru had thought that the Tribulation Swordmaster was Yu's friend. So, he had made such a wonderful mistake. Chu Yang's identity would have been exposed if this matter had been pursued relentlessly. Even if it hadn't been exposed, it wouldn't have been a secret to Yu. However, due to a freak combination of factors and a serious misunderstanding, this secret that was supposed to be exposed continued to be maintained. Moreover, after this concealment, Diwu Qingru would view Yu as his mortal enemy from now on. This added a deadlock to the exposure of this secret. Jing Meng Hun and Yin Wu Tian hurriedly entered the study room. Diwu Qingru cautiously said, "Your Golden Horse Riders Department will play a big role in this war. So, you two must be prepared." At this time, Chu Yang had quietly approached Diwu Qingru's Cheng Prime Minister's manor under the cover of the heavy rain. Chu Yang's body was like a demon in the pouring rain. His black clothes made him look like a ghost. He was floating in the rain like a weightless ghost. Every wall, every tree, every falling tree, and even every drop of rain had become his cover. Chu Yang had come to know how tight the defense of Diwu Qingru's Cheng Prime Minister's manor was after this secret infiltration. There were experts guarding the outermost perimeter of the Prime Minister's manor. They were closely watching every direction. Everyone who approached the young Prime Minister's manor was under their surveillance. Then, there were experts guarding him for every 100 feet he advanced. Moreover, they were patrolling in a circle in picturesque disorder. The outer circle of each defensive circle was focused on the blind spots of the previous defensive circle. From top to bottom, from outside to inside, they were monitoring him from all directions. If it weren't for this sudden downpour, it would have been impossible for Chu Yang to sneak into Diwu Qingru's Cheng Prime Minister's manor without anyone noticing. However, with this heavy rain, the impossible became possible. Diwu Qingru's young Prime Minister's manor was an absolutely safe place that hadn't had any accidents for many years. With this downpour, who would be willing to be drenched by the rain? So, Chu Yang carefully avoided it. Like a ghost, he floated close to the walls of Diwu Qingru's Cheng Prime Minister's manor. Naturally, the sword spirit's constant reminders were also the most important factors in his mind. After all, although there were many people who neglected their duties, there were even more people who were conscientious in their duties. How do I get up? Chu Yang looked at the 50 feet high wall and was worried. With his skills, he could naturally jump over it. But the problem was, there were definitely more experts watching this place. It was easy to get up, but not being discovered was indeed difficult. You can only take the risk, the sword spirit said sympathetically. Fuck. Chu Yang cursed in his heart. He had no choice but to take the risk. His body was stuck to the wall like a thin piece of paper. In the rain, Chu Yang's body was motionless. But he rose in a straight line without a sound. The raindrops fell on the ground and on his body. Chu Yang's head had already appeared on the wall. But he immediately stuck his head to the top of the wall. His body rose. Every bit he rose, he stuck to the wall. At this moment, it seemed as if his body didn't have any soft bones. Like a snake, he wriggled up and then lay on the wall. From beginning to end, he didn't make the slightest sound. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound. It seemed that someone was coming this way. Chu Yang's body tensed up. Then, he relaxed and calmed down. Who dares to come on such a rainy day? Don't they have anything better to do? One of them muttered. The more this kind of weather is, the more vigilant one should be. You must know that stealing the wind but not the moon, stealing the rain but not the snow, this is the treasure book of night walkers. Especially in such a heavy downpour, it is the best time for night walkers to appear. Another person scolded, if something big happens because of our negligence, then even if we have 10,000 heads, it won't be enough to chop off. Yes, yes, yes. Third brother Ning, I have learned. The other person's tone was obviously full of dissatisfaction. The two of them were talking as they walked. They were vigilantly watching the surrounding movements. They were completely unaware that Chu Yang was lying on the wall. Chu Yang didn't move. He listened to the two people walk away in the rain. Then, he quietly raised his head and looked at the house not far away. As long as he went up to the roof, it could be said that he had truly entered the Prime Minister's residence. Chapter 332. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chu Yang took a deep breath, and the rainwater gushed into his mouth. But he endured it. The muscles under his back contracted, and the muscles around his thighs contracted at the same time. Chu Yang's body suddenly floated up while lying flat on the ground. In the rain, he looked like a piece of slowly drifting dark cloud as he floated towards that side of the roof. This distance was a full 50 feet. Chu Yang had used such a high difficulty method to fight for his life. His body did not move at all, and he floated over 50 feet. When he had drifted more than halfway, he suddenly heard the two people who had just walked past him hurriedly coming back. Chu Yang cursed in his heart. Why did those two bastards come back? He was now floating quietly in the air, and he was a big target. If they raised their heads, they would immediately discover him. If they really discovered him, not to mention stealing the information, it would be wishful thinking for him to escape unscathed, but he had no other choice now. He could only resign himself to fate. He could not even increase his speed by a little. Something is not right. I said something is not right. One of the men walked over to where Chu Yang was lying and jumped up to look at the wall. Chu Yang closed his eyes. This person's actions had almost scared him to death. How did he notice that something was not right? What's wrong? The other man asked. Just now, I was thinking. Along the way, the sound of raindrops was always pitter-patter, but when we got here, it changed. It became puff puff puff. This is not the sound of raindrops hitting the wall. That person carefully inspected the wall, his brows furrowed. Chu Yang secretly exclaimed in his heart. And at this time, his body finally floated to the roof ridge on that side, and quietly landed behind the eaves. His heart was finally at ease, and he felt weak all over. He finally understood that being a thief also required a strong mentality. Just now, he was so scared that he almost had a heart attack. Something is not right. It's pa now. The tall man stood under the wall and did not raise his head. He was deep in thought. What do you mean by pa? Pu. I'm hearing pu from your body, another person said. Could it be that what I heard just now was coming from your body? The tall man asked suspiciously. Suddenly, he realized something and said, that's right. Only when the raindrops fall on a person's clothes will there be a pu sound. Looks like I really thought you were a spy. Ha ha. Another person snorted and scolded, that's right. You're the spy. The two of them finally walked away while talking. Chu Yang's body was also covered in cold sweat. That's right, the sound of raindrops hitting clothes and hitting the roof tiles was completely different. The roof tiles were hard and smooth, while the clothes were soft. If it was a lake, one would be able to tell right away. If he was in Diwu Qingru's study room right now, he would have been surrounded on all sides. But how to solve this problem? Chu Yang lay on his back, gritted his teeth, and gently removed his clothes. Silently, he was left with only a pair of underwear. The sound of the raindrops hitting his body was the same as the sound of the raindrops hitting the roof tiles. But King of Hell Chu looked at his naked body and could not help but sigh. Motherfucker, I have to betray my Prime Minister just for a little bit of information. Furthermore, her skin is too white, it's not as good as the black clothes. But there is no other choice. This is still considered the periphery. If I wear clothes, I will be found out before I can reach the inside. Although my body is white, but it should be fine if I am careful. Thinking of this, Minister Chu began to move cautiously. He was bare-chested, revealing his two big hairs. He moved stealthily above Diwu Qingru's Prime Minister manor. After moving 2 rooftops, he still felt that there was something wrong with the strip of cloth between his waist. Moreover, the sound was still pu. King of Hell Chu thought for a while and did not take it off. He just tore off another piece. Now, Chu Yang felt that it was fine. There was only a piece of cloth as thick as a finger left on his back. The front part of his body still had to be covered. But when the time comes, I can just lie down. The raindrops hit his buttocks and made pa sounds. However, such an image was simply too unsightly. Minister Chu smacked his lips. Who cares if it is unsightly or not? Anyway, no one will see it. This dark night is full of rain. The defense of the inner residence became even tighter. Chu Yang moved cautiously while listening to the movements below. At the same time, he observed his surroundings. He had already determined that although the defense of the Prime Minister's manor was tight, there should be 2 places with the tightest security. That was because all the defenses were set up to serve those 2 places. According to Chu Yang's guess, one of these places should be Diwu Qingru's bedroom, and the other should be the study. The wind was mournful. The rain in the sky did not lessen. Instead, it became heavier and heavier. Chu Yang grimaced in pain as the water curtains rained down from the sky. He was suffering unspeakable pain. He could even feel the strong impact of the raindrops hitting his buttocks. It was actually able to make a dent in his buttocks before bouncing back out. Is this fucking rain or hail? Chu Yang cursed fiercely in his heart. However, such a heavy rain provided excellent cover for his movements. He had unexpectedly broken into the innermost area without any danger. The place he was at now was one of the 2 places with the tightest security. Chu Yang quietly lay on the roof. He carefully paused for a while. There was no movement below. He could not help but sigh. It seemed that his luck was not good. Diwu Qingru was not inside. Chu Yang sighed resentfully and moved to another place. This time, Chu Yang was even more careful. The sword spirit felt strained because Chu Yang had used a huge amount of spiritual energy in less than 2 hours. It was simply a sea of spiritual energy. To put it bluntly, if the sword spirit had not stored so much spiritual energy for Chu Yang in his consciousness space, Chu Yang would not have been able to calmly reach this place. This was simply something that exceeded everyone's expectations. The sword spirit frantically turned the medicinal energy into energy and transferred it to the tribulation sword. After the tribulation sword digested it, it turned into pure spiritual energy and entered Chu Yang's dantian. Then, it rushed up from the dantian and into the meridians of the whole body, supporting Chu Yang's actions this time. It could be said that Chu Yang was in this invisible place. Due to his extreme nervousness, he did not know that he had completed the most important cultivation of his life in the process of being a thief. This could be said to be a fool's fortune. Finally, Chu Yang was like a thin piece of paper. He silently landed on the roof of Diwu Qingru's study in the pouring rain. Then, he slowly lay down. This was also because Chu Yang's luck was too good. Under normal circumstances, the roof of Diwu Qingru's study room was guarded by a martial expert. But today, this unprecedented rainstorm had drenched this martial expert. Moreover, when the rainstorm was getting heavier, Diwu Qingru personally ordered him to go down and rest. Now, this expert was in his own room feeling the thoughtfulness of Prime Minister Diwu. He did not know that his position had been completely occupied by someone else. Chu Yang quietly lay down. He quietly mobilized the greatest amount of energy he could use and listened attentively to the movements below. At this time, Diwu Qingru and Jing Meng were together, discussing the matters of this expedition. Han Biyu Chu was taking notes on one side. Han Biyu Chu's heart was filled with admiration for Diwu Qingru's strategic ideas. Some of Diwu Qingru's plans, strategies, arrangements, troops deployment, and arrangements were all linked together. There were no flaws. Every army cooperated with each other. Once something happened, at least 2 reinforcements would come immediately, using one's own bad news to form a trap for the enemy. In particular, the arrangements for each general were all in line with the general's temperament. So much so that Diwu Qingru had even included several generals of Iron Cloud in his calculations. Who should deal with whom? 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 What weakness should be exploited? Diwu Qingru seemed to be able to see the nearby mountains and rivers. He pointed out the possible uses of each mountain and river, and the possible disadvantages that could be exploited by the enemy. There were at least 3 sets of strategic plans for each geographical location. They could be flexibly adjusted according to the enemy's arrangements to ensure that the army remained in an invincible position, and so on and so forth. It was not only Han Biyu Chu who was in admiration. Even Minister Chu on the roof was in admiration. He had never seen a person with such a good brain. Not only did he have complete control over his own people, but he also had a thorough understanding of the enemy. He even knew the geography of the continent in his heart. Even a mountain had grown a few feet taller over the years. And how to use these few feet in battle? Diwu Qingru even had a plan. This was simply abnormal. King of Hell Chu was amazed in his heart. However, he concentrated on listening and memorizing. He knew that he only had this one chance. Diwu Qingru was pondering. He was speaking casually while letting Han Biyu Chu record. Diwu Qingru deeply understood a principle. A good memory is not as good as a lousy pen. His mind was very calm and his state of mind was excellent. Under such circumstances, he could think of many bold and imaginative strategies. If he did not record them down, his inspiration would be gone. If he forgot, it would be a huge loss. Diwu Qingru was confident that his memory was not inferior to anyone in the world. However, he did not dare to say that he could remember everything. Chapter 333. Diwu Qingru had a habit. Every time a war starts, he likes to deduce the battle in his heart. How to fight, how to proceed, how to fight with wits and bravery. What should I do if the enemy is like this? What should I do if the enemy is like this? Diwu Qingru's war fantasies had been proven to be true. They were based on the habits of the enemy's military commanders. Every time he made a deduction, he would find that whether it was the beginning, the process, or the end of the war, the result would be similar to Diwu Qingru's deduction. This was Diwu Qingru's unique ability. Right now, he was talking in a disorderly manner. It seemed that there was no order or logic to it at all. He would just say whatever came to his mind. However, after he had arranged everything, the person who recorded it would just need to record it all down and sort it out a little. It would then become a complete war textbook. Then, Diwu Qingru would personally go to the battlefield with this organized record. In some critical moments, he would be too late to perform. Or, his mind would be in a mess. But, he only needed to flip through the record, and he would be able to sort out his thoughts. Then, he would be able to lead the troops to the correct path. This was Diwu Qingru's unique ability. Diwu Qingru's wonderful ideas gradually came to an end. Han Biu Chu's wrist was almost sore from the recording. Minister Chu was even more miserable on the roof. He felt that his skin had become numb from the raindrops. Moreover, he had to rack his brain to remember every word that Diwu Qingru had said. He had to remember as much as he could. Under the internal and external frictions, the exhaustion of his spirit had reached its peak. King-level Master Jing, how much military strength can your Golden Horse Riders Department mobilize this time? Diwu Qingru asked. It was obvious that Diwu Qingru was going to use this secret force as his trump card after he had finished arranging the military forces. Chu Yang on the roof immediately pricked up his ears. Jing Meng pondered for a moment and said, Golden Horse Riders Department has suffered many setbacks during this time. Their high-level strength has been reduced. But, their general framework hasn't collapsed. If the Prime Minister is going to go all out this time. He paused and said, the main army of Golden Horse Riders can mobilize 15,000 people. Furthermore, these 10,000 Golden Horse Riders could be assigned with 20 Command Horse Riders as commanders. The Black Horse Assassin Knights can be dispatched with 1,000 men. If the Iron Horse Cavalry is present, another 1,000 men can be added. If the Black Horse Cavalry is allowed to go into battle, there will be a total of 300 men. In the Golden Horse Riders Department, the Golden Horse Riders were in charge of combat, while the Command Horse Riders were the higher-ups. The Black Horse Riders were assassins, while the Iron Horse Riders were in charge of intelligence and scouting. The Black Horse Riders were in charge of punishment, while the Silver Horse Riders were not necessarily in charge of fighting, but they were in charge of money and making money. Every one of them was an extremely shrewd business mind. Jing Meng paused again and said, as for the strength of the Silver Horse Riders, if we gather them, we can provide Prime Minister with 100 million taels of silver for this war. Diwu Qingru nodded in satisfaction. He then said, we won't need to hold anything back in this war. It would be enough to have Yin Wutian stay behind with 100 people to take care of Yin Wutian. Naturally, the most important task was to suppress the prefectures, and there could not be any chaos. If there's any mishap, Ji Li will take action. It's better to kill the wrong person than to let them go, Meng Han said. In other words, this time, the Golden Horse Riders Department can dispatch 18,000 people? Yes. King-level leader Jing, you will personally lead the army to suppress the Golden Horse Riders Department. 20 Command Horse Riders will be scattered. Diwu Qingru slowly paced and said, this time, there may be 3 big battlefields. You will divide the 18,000 people into 2,500 elite troops. You will divide them into 3 big battalions, each of which will be led by a command horse rider. At the critical moment of the war, you will have the power to break through the enemy's ranks. Yes. Jing Meng Han's eyes emitted a crazy desire to fight. In addition, you will personally lead 10,000 people. 14 command horse riders will intersperse them. They will be the last force, and also the trump card that will decide the outcome of the war. Diwu Qingru said slowly. His eyes flashed. Jing Meng Han hastily complied. He repeated it in his mind and firmly remembered it. Prime Minister, why do you want to divide them like this? Han Biu Chu was puzzled. If 18,000 people were divided into 3 battalions, wouldn't their fighting strength be even stronger? Moreover, no matter which side it was in front of, it would be a powerful force. 2,500 people. In a war with millions of troops, it was still too little. Golden Horse Riders Department is no longer a secret. Iron Cloud certainly knows about Golden Horse Riders Department. They have always been in awe of Golden Horse Riders Department. They have always been inquiring about Golden Horse Riders Department, but the number of people in Golden Horse Riders Department is a big secret. Besides King-level leader Jing, even I don't know the exact number of people in Golden Horse Riders Department. This is a result that I have intentionally created. Diwu Qingru gently smiled and said, therefore, according to Tai Long Cheng's personality, he will inevitably train a group of elites to deal with Golden Horse Riders Department. Our 3 battalions have them. You should know that these 3 battalions together have a fighting strength of 8,000 people. Tai Long Cheng only needs to face each other once to find out. The terrifying fighting strength of Golden Horse Riders Department will certainly surprise him. If that's the case, why not? If that's the case, Tai Long Cheng will be surprised and afraid, but he will also be relieved. Once Golden Horse Riders Department makes a move, it will no longer be a secret. Therefore, Ironclad's vigilance against Golden Horse Riders Department will also be reduced. Therefore, they will certainly send out their elites to destroy these 3 battalions at all cost. In other words, these 3 battalions will attract the attention of their elite. But these 3 battalions will not be easy to swallow even if they are given to them to eat. And when they gradually encroach on these 3 battalions of Golden Horse Riders Department, they will certainly be relieved, Diwu Qingru slowly said. At that time, they will have the courage to fight. Diwu Qingru's voice was somewhat sarcastic as he said this. However, no one knows that I have left 10,000 of the Golden Horse Riders Department's elite fighting force to deal with him. So, what will happen? Diwu Qingru chuckled. So that's how it is. These 10,000 people are the Prime Minister's true secret weapon, Han Biyu-chu suddenly realized. Yes, this is the real force that will decide the outcome of the war. Moreover, it's also the most unexpected force. Diwu Qingru's eyes flashed with a trace of cold light. Kill the generals, seize the flag, and directly crush Tai Long Cheng's main force. If I'm not wrong, it will fall on these people to capture Tai Long Cheng and Tai Biyu Tian alive. The Prime Minister is wise. Han Biyu-chu prostrated himself in admiration. Golden Horse Riders Department had always been a secret. But, it was no longer a secret in the battle between the 2 sides. At the very least, the higher-ups of both sides were well aware that the other side was aware of it. And, Diwu Qingru was playing tricks with this number of people. He was going to kill a team from the dark, and deal a heavy blow to the enemy. But, he was going to use his real strength in this battle. And, he was going to use it as a hidden killer move. The power that had already become clear was once again transformed into a dark and deadly blade. Chu Yang was listening on the roof. He was sweating all over. If he hadn't heard these words, he wouldn't have doubted if he had encountered this force on the battlefield. He would have fallen into Diwu Qingru's trap. If that were to happen, the 10,000 elites that would fall from the sky during the final battle would truly be caught unawares and consigned to eternal damnation. Diwu Qingru was really ruthless. He was willing to use a total of 18,000 elite soldiers as cannon fodder for the final victory. Okay, I will remember. Jing Meng said, Prime Minister, there is also the poison you asked me to collect last time. I have collected almost all of it. How much do you have now? Diwu Qingru asked. The water-soluble poison has already been refined to 1,300 pounds. The moose smoke and the chaotic spirit grass are about 2,000 pounds each. Jing Meng said with a heavy tone, what's the real deal? Diwu Qingru slowly nodded and said, the water-soluble poison is still too little. We need to hurry up and refine it. The moose smoke is almost enough. However, we still need to continue collecting. The more the better. Meng respectfully complied. Those poison masters, check again. If there is a little suspicious, kill them without mercy. Diwu Qingru slowly paced 2 steps. Yes. The most important thing is to observe the direction of the wind and the direction of the flow of the water. Another thing is, every time you throw in the poison, there must be one family. You must prepare the troops in advance. Diwu Qingru exhorted. Yes. I have already told you these things to pay attention to. Then tell me again. Diwu Qingru's voice was very strict. This is a serious matter. You must not be careless. Yes. On the roof, Chu Yang's heart could not help but pound. This shock was really too big. His whole body was covered in cold sweat. He almost could not feel the pouring rain outside his body. Poison. 1,300 pounds of water-soluble poison was still too little. Chu Yang was very clear about the water-soluble poison's function. If a troop's water source was poisoned, how big would the loss be? As for the moose smoke and the chaotic spirit grass, they were even more serious. If Diwu Qingru's men stood in the wind during the decisive battle and lit the moose smoke, then they would be able to resolve the battle without shedding a drop of blood. Moreover, Chu Yang dared to bet that Diwu Qingru would never let his troops be in a position where the wind was against him. If the wind was against him, Diwu Qingru would rather give up the opportunity to fight. His heart skipped a beat. He knew that he was in trouble. The two people below were much more powerful than him. He could hide here because the sword spirit had restrained his golden body's vitality. Now that his heart had skipped a beat, he would definitely be alert. Suddenly, there was silence below. Chapter 334. Chu Yang didn't hesitate. He jumped up and pulled out his calamity sword. The curtain of rain shook and he turned into a ray of light. His body and sword became one. He used all his strength and flew out like a meteor. The moment he jumped up, the roof that he was hiding in suddenly exploded with a loud bang, and was completely lifted up by an unparalleled force, turning into a huge hole. A loud shout came, "Where do you think you're going?" Following which, a powerful force as condensed as a mountain flew over as if it had materialized. The strength chi broke through the air, emitting a sharp whistling sound. Wherever the strength chi passed, it created a vacuum in the pouring rain. The water vapor actually exploded with a loud bang, filling the air with a misty white mist. Chu Yang had arrived at the perimeter of the wall. He was about 300 feet away from the study. However, he felt as if his back had been smashed by a 1,000-pound hammer. His chest felt as if it had been smashed by a 1,000-pound hammer. He felt as if his internal organs had been shattered. His vision had turned blurry. He knew that he had sustained fatal injuries. His legs went soft. He stood on the wall and almost fell down again. Sharp whistling sounds came from all directions. It was an extremely dense rain of arrows that flew over like a black cloud and shot towards Chu Yang from all directions. The rain of arrows filled the sky, and miraculously blocked the heavy rain outside. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and used all his strength. He kicked off the wall and waved the calamity sword in his hand. It was a move called This Road to the Underworld. This move was both a sword control and an indomitable killing move. At this moment, he used the power of this move. His body turned into a blurry white shadow under the sword light and shot forward like a sharp arrow. He flew into the air and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, it was reflected by the dense sword light onto his body. That mouthful of blood was mixed with a few pieces of his internal organs. The sword light flashed like a meteor. The wall behind him had turned into a huge hedgehog with arrows sticking out of it. Cold light. The heavy rain that was obstructed finally fell to the ground with a loud crash. There was a hubbub of voices and the entire residence was in chaos. Martial arts experts sprang up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Suddenly, they appeared in the heavy rain and chased after Chu Yang. On the roof of the study room, Diwu Qingru slowly retracted his right hand. His eyes were fierce. It seemed as if he had pierced through the heavy curtain of rain to capture Chu Yang's figure. Who is it? Jing Menghun's heart palpitated with fear. This person's body was extremely fast. Jing Menghun had just come out, but the opposite party had already escaped after receiving a palm strike. It's King of Hell Chu. Diwu Qingru's expression turned solemn. Diwu Qingru caught a glimpse of Chu Yang's back. Even though Chu Yang wasn't wearing any clothes at the moment, Diwu Qingru still had a deep impression of this sharp-tongued Duke Chu. This was the first time in his life that he had been tricked so miserably. So, how could he not have a deep impression? The moment he saw this figure, he immediately recognized it. Coating, you came here naked on such a rainy night to steal information. Diwu Qingru coldly snorted and said, King of Hell Chu is very careful and daring. Jing Menghun and Yin Wutian were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Diwu Qingru's sudden display of martial arts had already shocked the two of them. And now, King of Hell Chu's trail had appeared in the heavily guarded Prime Minister's mansion. Diwu Qingru's heaven-shaking strike had left the two of them dazzled. The two of them had come out late. They had only seen Diwu Qingru raise his hand. Then, a sharp sound of breaking air resounded. Then, A sword light disappeared like a meteor. It was just a glimpse, but it was enough to make people revere him to the extreme. What kind of terrifying cultivation does he have to be to send out such a palm strike? He was 300 feet away from the wall at that time. Is Diwu Qingru confident that his palm strike can reach that far? Pursue him with all your might. Diwu Qingru's eyes flashed as he insipidly said, he was hit by my destroying soul and breaking heart palm. His 5 internal organs must have been severely damaged. His organs must have been shattered, he can't have run far. This time, I want to see him alive or dead. Yes. Jing Menghun complied. He thought, destroying soul and breaking heart palm? What kind of martial arts is this? Which aristocratic family does he belong to? This was the first time that Jing Menghun had heard of this name. However, he felt that these 5 words were full of cruelty and blood. It seemed that just hearing this name would make people's heart throb. The destroying soul and breaking heart palm doesn't have any external injuries. However, this palm technique only targets the internal organs. Diwu Qingru explained, moreover, the person hit by the destroying soul and breaking heart palm will emit an orchid fragrance from his 5 internal organs if he doesn't die after 2 hours. This fragrance is very easy to track. Moreover, this orchid fragrance can't be removed. Unless the body, Therefore, this destroying soul and breaking heart palm has been changed to 10,000 miles fragrance, orchid heart chasing soul. Diwu Qingru's sharp eyes looked at Jing Menghun. Do you understand? I understand. Jing Menghun's spirit was roused. He thought, I might as well hang myself if I can't catch King of Hell Chu this time with such an obvious tracking method. The prefectures and the nearby cities must be under lockdown. If you can't find him in 1 day, the lockdown will be extended by 50 miles. If you can't find him in 3 days, the lockdown will be extended by 500 miles. If you can't find him in 10 days, the entire Great Jiao will be under lockdown all the way to the border of Iron Cloud. Diwu Qingru said resolutely, yes. It's better to kill the wrong person than to let him go. Even if you find him, you can't stop until you can confirm his identity. You must bring the person or the corpse back for me to personally confirm. Only then can the lockdown be lifted. Yes. Kill Chu Yang today, and we will have the country in our hands tomorrow. Diwu Qingru's eyes emitted a scorching light. We will do our best. He paused and then said, we will do our best. He paused again and then continued, if you escape from the hands of anyone, your clan will be exterminated. If you don't perform well in the search, your clan will be exterminated. If you don't report, your clan will be exterminated. If you cooperate, your clan will be exterminated. This lockdown will not be lifted as long as King of Hell Chu is alive. Yes. Go. You will lead all the command horse riders and the entire force of the Golden Horse Riders Department in this search. I will issue a lockdown order later. Regardless of the level of the officials, they will cooperate with you. Yes. If you can't find him in 2 hours, pay attention to the orchid fragrance. Go. Yes. I will take my leave. The people had gone far away, and the Prime Minister's mansion had become quiet. However, the entire prefecture had begun to fall into chaos. King of Hell Chu, it would be a miracle if you can escape from my destroying soul and breaking heart palm at such a close distance. But I don't believe that you are so lucky that you are blessed by the will of heaven. Diwu Qingru thought, if Chu Yang is still alive under such circumstances, then there is no other explanation other than the blessing of heaven. Diwu Qingru returned to the study room and thought for a while. He looked at the rain pouring down from the big hole in the ceiling. His eyes flashed. He muttered to himself, but still felt somewhat uneasy. This is too important. King of Hell Chu sneaked into the study room while I was making arrangements. It can be said that he has already seen through my entire plan. It would be terrible if King of Hell Chu escapes this time. The safest way is to turn King of Hell Chu into a dead man. And this time, it was indeed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Soul and breaking heart palm. Orchid fragrance. It can be said that King of Hell Chu's life has never been in my hands. Tai Long Cheng and Tai Bu Tian won't be a problem as long as King of Hell Chu is killed. Diwu Qingru turned around, and his robe fell on the chair with a shua sound. a black shadow suddenly shot out from the study room and jumped to the roof. It stopped in the void at the place where Chu Yang was eavesdropping. Then, as if it was imitating something, it suddenly jumped up, and the sword in its hand turned into a round sword light. It swept through the rainy night, and reached the top of the wall. Then, its legs went soft, and the long sword emitted a cold light. This person's figure suddenly disappeared along with the sword light. All of these actions were exactly the same as what Chu Yang had done earlier. In the darkness of the night, this person vaguely left behind a sentence: he leapt to the top of the wall to borrow strength from there. This kind of cultivation is definitely not at the king level. Yes, not at the king level. Even a king-level expert would have died without a doubt after that palm strike, let alone a mere revered martial artist. Diwu Qingru had always appeared in front of the world as a human. But, this time, he had personally set out to kill King of Hell Chu. Chu Yang was running for his life. He felt that his internal organs had been shattered. The injuries he had sustained this time were no small matter. Sword Spirit tried his best to use the medicinal efficacies to heal his injuries. But, there wasn't much of an effect. You must immediately stop and find a place to treat your injuries. Otherwise, given your current condition, if you use your full power at full speed, I'm afraid you will become the first sword master in history to die today, the Sword Spirit said in his mind. You still have the face to talk. Chu Yang was somewhat angry. He was extremely sad and indignant. His cultivation hadn't reached the point where he could hide all the vitality in his body. So, he couldn't stop his heartbeat to eavesdrop. All of this had been done by Sword Spirit. Sword Spirit had intercepted Chu Yang's vitality when he had successfully possessed Diwu Qingru's study room. Even an emperor-level expert wouldn't have been able to detect Chu Yang's existence under such circumstances. But, he had been severely impacted by this information at the most critical moment. And, his heartbeat had recovered. This recovery of his heartbeat wasn't a big deal. But, it had pushed him into a bottomless abyss. I couldn't do anything. Sword Spirit also felt very wronged. He said, you can stop your heartbeat for at most half an hour with your current revered sword master cultivation. You won't be able to stop your heartbeat for more than half an hour. But, I also had a way at that time. I only needed to wrap your vitality with sword intent. Then, your heart would stop beating with sword intent. And, everything would be fine. But, who would have thought that I would withdraw my power? And, I would have been prepared to use sword intent. And, your heart would have started to beat fiercely because of this information. Chapter 335. The timing was too coincidental. It was supposed to be a foolproof plan, but because of a moment of carelessness in the blink of an eye, it led to an irrecoverable effect. Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of blood. He listened to the increasingly chaotic sounds of pursuit from all directions. It seemed as if the entire province was on the move. He helplessly said, "Where can I hide in such a situation?" Sword Spirit also sighed. There is no place to hide in such a situation. Moreover, this is Great Jiao. Moreover, this is the capital city of Great Jiao. If I were to randomly find a place to hide, I might be sold to Diwu Qingru as soon as I enter. And, I can't look for my own people. There's no other possibility except to implicate them and send them to their deaths. But, his injuries are so serious. Is this Master of Tribulation sword going to die? It was still night time. But, the sun would rise in at most half an hour. And, there would be nowhere to hide once the sun rose. Even now, the sounds of the search were getting closer and closer. Chu Yang felt that his speed was getting slower and slower. He felt as if there was 1,000 pounds under his feet. He barely managed to flip over a low wall. Then, his body went limp. He leaned against a pile of firewood in a corner. He barely squeezed his body into the pile of firewood. But, he didn't have the least bit of strength left in his body. He opened his eyes and looked through the gaps in the pile of firewood. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. I thought that I had entered a house. But, I didn't know that I was at a fork in a small road. And, this pile of firewood is in a conspicuous position. Motherfucker. Even a fart can dislocate a person's heel when they are unlucky. Chu Yang muttered in his heart. However, he didn't even have the strength to move his fingers. So, he could only resign himself to fate. There was a lot of noise. People were constantly passing by this pile of firewood. They were in a hurry. The sound of horse hooves was rapid. They came with a rumbling sound, and then rumbled away. More than a dozen people came and went in a short period of time. Some people even stopped by this pile of firewood to talk for a while. They expressed their views on the matter of the pursuit of King of Hell Chu. Chu Yang steeled his heart at this time. Do whatever you want. Anyway, the situation is so bad that I can't even imagine it. The worst result is that I will be captured. That's all. I've already died once. So, why would I be afraid of death? This generation was a prophet to begin with. With this thought in mind, he suddenly calmed down and no longer paid attention to the movements around him. He sank into his consciousness and began to heal himself. Sword Spirit, how are my injuries? Chu Yang calmly asked in his mind. Extremely serious. The Sword Spirit actually sighed. Hey, your heart meridians have been severely shaken. In fact, they have almost shattered into fine powder. Your 5 internal organs have been damaged. Your liver has been ruptured. Your kidneys have been ruptured, and your lungs have been broken into 5 pieces. The smallest piece of them has already been spurted out by your blood. Your heart is on the verge of shattering. Sword Spirit solemnly said, you would have died if I hadn't used my sword energy to protect your 5 internal organs. He paused and said, if I release my sword intent now, you will die immediately. So serious. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, can it be cured? No. The Sword Spirit replied straightforwardly, unless it's the complete version of the heavy pill. In the current situation, even if you convert all the medicinal power in your body into healing power, it still won't work. Oh. Chu Yang smiled quietly, and no longer spoke. The Sword Spirit was surprised. Why don't you continue to ask? I hate to see you keep me in suspense. Chu Yang snorted and said, I don't want to be laughed at even if I die. You obviously haven't finished speaking. What's the difference between me asking and not asking? The Sword Spirit smiled embarrassedly. He had no choice but to continue and said, there's only one way at the moment. That is, I'll continue to wrap your 5 internal organs with my sword intent. Then, I'll slowly use the medicinal power to heal your injuries. Of course, you can take the incomplete heavy pill first before that. Then, you can barely move. But, don't even think about a complete recovery. How do you mean barely move? Chu Yang frowned and asked, I must escape from the prefecture capital in the shortest time possible. The Sword Spirit quickly calculated and said, you can barely move like an ordinary person. But, it's impossible to use your full strength. At most, you can use half of your strength. Moreover, your body will be damaged every time you use it. Okay. Chu Yang didn't even think about it and directly agreed. The current situation was extremely bad. As long as he could recover a little bit of his ability to move, it would be better than sitting and waiting for death. He calculated the time and realized that he had been out for nearly half a quarter of an hour. He should still be near the Prime Minister's mansion at the moment. Oh, by the way, I have another bad news to tell you, the Sword Spirit said helplessly, you must hold on. What news can be worse than this? Chu Yang frowned. You must escape from the prefecture capital within 3 hours. The Sword Spirit also smiled bitterly. The power of your palm this time is very strange. If you don't die, your 5 internal organs will emit orchid fragrance after 4 hours. I can't block this kind of fragrance. Chu Yang was startled. Doesn't that mean that, no matter how I disguise myself, it won't help? You only need a dog to track me. Chu Yang had originally planned to disguise himself as long as he could recover a little bit of his ability to move. Then, he would use this unparalleled disguising technique to travel thousands of miles back to Iron Cloud. But, he was in despair when he heard about this. He could only use less than half of his strength, but he had to fight for 13,000 miles. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Isn't this thinking too highly of myself? That's the truth, the Sword Spirit said. You don't have much time now. What kind of palm power is this? Even the tribulation sword can't do anything about it. Chu Yang muttered in his heart. But he immediately took a heavy pill and began to heal his injuries. Just as the sword spirit had said, he didn't have much time left. If he couldn't leave the prefecture capital within 3 hours, then this king of Hell Chu, the master of tribulation sword, would immediately die in this prefecture capital. Diwu Qingru was dressed in black. His face was covered with a black veil. He left the prime minister's mansion like a whirlwind and followed in the direction of Chu Yang's escape. If Chu Yang was next to him, his eyeballs would have popped out of their sockets. Because Diwu Qingru's tracking route was exactly the same as Chu Yang's escape route. There was no mistake. One must know that Chu Yang looked like he was running in a panic. But, in fact, he had already explored the escape route before he took action. Otherwise, how could he have left the site of his pursuers as soon as he came out? There were many twists and turns along the way. He had changed directions at least 100 times. Diwu Qingru suddenly stopped and landed in a corner of the wall. He looked at the dark brown bloodstain in the corner of the wall and frowned as he muttered, "This should be the effect of that palm strike." But how did he get here with his revered martial artist cultivation? Even a king-level expert wouldn't be able to withstand it. Why did he run so far away? Could it be that I didn't hit him? Or could it be that he has a heavenly treasure on him? His eyes swept over the bloodstain, and he suddenly found something strange. He carefully turned it over with his hands. It was a small piece of an internal organ. Diwu Qingru gently picked it up with his fingers and looked at it. This is a lung fragment. It seems that the palm hit him. Moreover, King of Hell Chu's injuries are very serious. Since he vomited here, it means that his injuries couldn't be suppressed. So, he must be not far from here. He stood up and scanned the area with his eagle eyes. After a while, he stretched out his body and used the bloodstain as the center to search the area within a radius of 400 to 500 feet. There's nothing strange. Diwu Qingru had chased after Chu Yang in one breath. But now that he had stopped, he had lost that mysterious feeling. He looked in the direction of the Prime Minister's mansion. Then, he flew in the opposite direction. The direction was correct again. However, Diwu Qingru didn't know that he had used less strength this time. He thought that Chu Yang couldn't suppress his injuries because he had found a piece of internal organ here. Therefore, Diwu Qingru used a very slow speed to imitate a fatally injured person. However, he didn't know that Chu Yang's speed hadn't slowed down even though he couldn't suppress his injuries. As for that mouthful of blood, he had already spat it out when he escaped from the encirclement of the wall. It was just that he had been trapped by the sword light all this time. When he came here to take a breath, the blood fell out of the encirclement of the sword light and landed here. Diwu Qingru had used the most reasonable method to track Chu Yang. But he had entered the wrong path. Chu Yang woke up from his meditation not long after. He felt that his whole body was full of strength. However, his internal organs and chest were numb. He didn't feel anything. He knew that the sword spirit was using the sword intent to protect his internal organs. But he didn't care. He looked out through the gaps of the firewood. He saw people coming and going. A group of people passed by here almost every 2 breaths. Chu Yang held his breath and looked at the group of people who had just turned the corner. He planned to go out immediately and follow behind them as soon as they left. Pay attention. You're still naked, the sword spirit reminded him in his mind. Chu Yang suddenly realized that if he went out naked, there would be no need to hide. But he was on the road. Where could he go to change clothes? Although there were clothes in the tribulation space, he had to put them on. Chu Yang suddenly had a strange thought. Sword spirit, can I enter the tribulation space? He thought, if I can enter, who can find me? Your own body. Do you think you can go in? Why don't you dig a hole in your arm and see if you can get in? The sword spirit said disdainfully, why are you asking such a simple question? Chu Yang immediately rolled his eyes. Chapter 336. But, you can still come in. Sword spirit suddenly changed. Wind. Chu Yang was overjoyed when he heard sword spirit say, you can come in when you get the 8th fragment of the tribulation sword. Chu Yong wisely stopped talking. My words are irritating enough. But this hateful sword spirit's words are even more irritating than mine. Eventually, the patrol team passed by. Chu Yong controlled the pile of firewood so that it wouldn't make any noise. Then, he got out of the pile with a shoo sound. He immediately put on his black clothes at lightning speed. Naturally, he didn't have time to put on his underwear. The pile of firewood that Chu Yong had entered in a hurry was very dark. The more obvious the target was, the less attention it would attract under such circumstances. Everyone's attention would be drawn to the dark corners. Just like that, he put on a set of clothes that looked exactly the same as the search team. Then, he looked around arrogantly and followed behind the search team. He caught up with them and actually greeted them. How is it? Did you find anything? Find my ass. The leader of the team gloomily said, You're driving us crazy. So are we. Chu Yong sighed and said, Captain Gang Sai asked me to jump into a place. But, I found that it was a latrine after I jumped in. Ha ha ha. This man burst into laughter. He obviously thought that Chu Yong's words were very funny. Then, a figure landed with a whoosh sound. Did you find any clues? It was Jing Meng Hun. The leader replied, reporting to king-level expert, No. Jing Meng Hun angrily said, Trash. Look again. Then, he jumped up and flew towards the front to search. Chu Yong saw that Jing Meng Hun was heading towards the western city gate. So, he said, You search. I'll go back to the team. Someone waved his hand and said, Go, go. Chu Yong smiled. Then, he went in the opposite direction of Jing Meng Hun. The leader came back to his senses after Chu Yong left. He scratched his head and said, Where did this hothead come from? The other 5 people looked at each other. One of them said, This guy is really lucky. He jumped into the latrine. He must have gone back to change his clothes and come back. Everyone burst into laughter. The captain's suspicions also disappeared. He said, Let's go. Everyone, be careful. This is King of Hell Chu we are talking about. It's a big deal if we catch him. But, we must also be careful. Don't die in his hands and become a dead subject. As they chatted, they walked away. The captain's reaction was quite fast. If he had followed his original train of thought, then Chu Yong's appearance alone would certainly have aroused his vigilance. After all, in this search, everyone was in a group. Who would go alone? However, his subordinate's words perfectly explained the reason for Chu Yong's appearance. This was truly speechless. Chu Yong hadn't gone far at this time. So, he couldn't help but smile when he heard this guy's explanation. He walked all the way to the east. After walking for a period of time, he came across several search teams in front of him. Chu Yong turned to the north. He had a thought in his heart, instead of taking a roundabout route, I might as well go straight to the north gate. Iron Cloud is in the north of the province. He came across several search teams along the way. Chu Yong didn't evade or avoid them. He was natural and unrestrained. Chu Yong used the excuse that he had fallen into the latrine and had gone back to change his clothes. The north gate was in sight. However, Chu Yong saw it from afar. He sucked in a cold breath. He saw many black-clothed people gathered at the city gate. The city gate was tightly closed. The number of soldiers guarding the gate had increased by 5 times. Their swords and sabers were unsheathed and emitted a cold light. How can I pass through this gate? I can use excuses in the city. But, I can't use such excuses to go out of the city. I'm afraid that I'll be taken back once I get close to the city gate. But, there's less than a quarter of an hour left before my body starts to emit the orchid fragrance. What should I do? I can help you once. The sword spirit had also discovered Chu Yong's situation. So, he said in a muffled voice. How can you help me? Chu Yong hurriedly asked. I can use the power of my spiritual body to help you change your appearance. You can change into another person's appearance and go out of the city. The sword spirit was very reluctant. It was because his spiritual body had recovered less than 10% of its power. If he helped Chu Yong this time, it would be reduced by more than half. However, he couldn't not help. He wouldn't dissipate if Chu Yong died. But, the the sword calamity would split up again. And he would be buried in the ground with the sword point for 10,000 years. The sword spirit can't accept such a result. Chu Yang made a prompt decision. Then, you immediately change my appearance into that of Jing Meng Hun. Jing Meng Hun? The sword spirit was surprised. I didn't expect this guy to be so bold. Yes. Hurry up. Chu Yang looked at the black-clothed people at the city gate. His eyes suddenly emitted a murderous intention. At this moment, he suddenly thought of a plan under the advice of the sword spirit. Good. The sword spirit did as he said. He knew that there was no time to delay. Chu Ruo felt a piercing pain on his face. His facial features had shifted from their original position in an instant. If it was someone with a weak will, they would have already screamed out in pain. However, Chu Yang knew that this was a matter of life and death. So, he didn't dare to make a sound. The sound of horses' hooves was heard. A group of people is rushing over here. Well, I've forcibly changed your appearance into someone else's. I've used half of my spiritual power. I'm afraid I'll fall asleep if this happens again. You have to be careful. I can only change your appearance for 3 hours. The sword spirit reminded. Chu Yang was listening. He grabbed a cloak from the calamity space and put it on his body. Then, he brazenly jumped out and blocked the way. He shouted in a seemingly urgent manner, "Get down." The leading officer was shocked when he saw this. The first king-level master of the Golden Horse Riders Department, Jing Meng Hun, has arrived here. He hurriedly got down from his horse. King-level master? Chu Yang felt that time was passing quickly. He didn't want to waste time talking nonsense with him. So, he shouted, "Get lost. I want to use your horse." Yes, yes, the officer hurriedly moved aside. He had been ordered to come here. So, he knew that the first king-level master of the Golden Horse Riders Department was stamping with rage. So, he didn't dare to disobey him. Chu Yang jumped on his horse. He shook the reins and shouted, "Come with me." He kicked the horse's belly. The horse shot towards the city gate like an arrow. Hundreds of cavalrymen shouted at the same time, and followed king-level expert Jing to rush forward. The sky had brightened by this time. Chu Yang shouted when he was 1,000 feet away from the city gate, "Open the city gate." Then, he flicked his hand, and a jade token flew out. It was the jade token that Jing Meng Hun had given him. This jade token was the symbol of Jing Meng Hun's status. Chu Yang was sure that Jing Meng Hun wouldn't have enough time to change the token. Moreover, this matter was dishonorable. So, Jing Meng Hun wouldn't necessarily speak of it. Chu Yang's time had reached the end of the hourglass. The orchid fragrance on Chu Yang's body would have dispersed by the time the city gate was opened if he had spoken. Therefore, Chu Yang decided to take a risk. The expert of the Golden Horse Riders Department at the city gate heard an order. Then, he saw a green light flying towards him. He caught it, and turned pale with fright. This was King-level Master Jing's token. Then, he saw King-level Master Jing leading a large group of cavalry soldiers from afar. It was clear that he wanted to leave the city gate in one fell swoop. He hastily raised his hand and shouted, "King-level Master wants to leave the city. Quickly open the gate." The officer guarding the city gate hurriedly gave the order, and with a creaking sound, the city gate slowly opened a crack, and the gate slowly opened. Chu Yang had already arrived in front of the gate. He didn't stop. He shouted in Jing Meng Hun's voice, "You 100 people immediately change into the horses behind. Then, follow me out of the city to capture King of Hell Chu. Quickly, quickly, quickly." Chu Yang took the lead and left the city gate after he had shouted quickly 3 times. How could King-level Master Jing leave the city without his entourage? Even if he wanted to capture the King of Hell, he would have brought his men with him. How could he be alone? Therefore, Chu Yang immediately issued this order. This matter couldn't be concealed for long. But, it could be delayed for as long as possible. There weren't any experts here. So, it would have taken some time to transmit the news. Every second was as precious as gold for Chu Yang. The command horse rider of the Golden Horse Riders Department immediately shouted. He waved his hand and shouted in a stern voice, Everyone, quickly get on your horses. Follow me out of the city. It had to be said that the strict discipline of the Golden Horse Riders Department was evident at this moment. The experts of the Golden Horse Riders Department leaped into the air at the same time. Each of them had already kicked the galloping cavalrymen down from their horses. Then, they mounted their own horses and clamped their legs together. Their horses didn't slow down in the slightest. Everyone from the Golden Horse Riders Department had already mounted their horses at the northern gate. Then, they galloped out of the city gate with a whistling sound. The 200-plus cavalrymen who had been stabbed down hurriedly jumped off their horses. While they were rolling on the ground and screaming in pain, their horses followed closely behind the 100 cavalrymen in front of them and rushed out of the north gate in a ferocious manner. The sound of the horses' hoofs rose like a whirlwind. Then, they suddenly disappeared into the distance. Everyone woke up from their stupor as if they had just woken up from a dream. The Golden Horse Riders Department is tyrannical. The officer guarding the city gate looked at the mess of the cavalrymen. Almost everyone was groaning in pain. He couldn't help but speak these words in awe. Those who had dismounted from their horses were in a better condition. But, those who had been kicked down from their horses had big bruises on their bodies. More than a dozen of them had broken their bones. More than 20 of them had fainted. How could such tyrannical people not be afraid? Chapter 337. Chu Yang urged his horse to gallop as soon as he left the city gate. He looked like a cloud of dust as he swept across the ground. He would turn around and shout every once in a while, "Keep up! Quickly keep up!" It was as if he would not give up until the horse under him was completely exhausted. He kept urging the command horse rider to keep up. He wanted to let the command horse rider know that this matter was extremely urgent. The king-level expert must have obtained some important information. That's why he didn't care about his horse. The command horse rider immediately felt the urgency of the king-level expert. So, he couldn't help but urge, quickly. You will lose your head if you delay this important matter." Therefore, more than 100 people rode 300 horses as they rushed forward with all their might. The cavalry team rushed north. A big mountain appeared in front of them after nearly an hour. They had arrived at the foot of the mountain. They were in a dense forest. The horse was so tired that it was foaming at the mouth. Chu Yang shouted and pulled the reins. The horse slowly stopped. The command horse rider overtook him like a whirlwind. He immediately turned his horse around and asked, "King-level expert, what's wrong? We'll take a short break. We'll start the operation soon." Jing Meng Hun spoke in an extremely serious tone. "Has the King of Hell escaped here?" the command horse rider asked in amazement. "This King of Hell Chu is very fast if that's the case." "Yes. King of Hell Chu is in this mountain," Jing Meng Hun said. "This will be a fierce battle. You must rest well and succeed in one fell swoop." "Yes." This subordinate thanks the king-level expert for his support. The command horse rider's eyes flashed with a blazing light. "Capturing King of Hell Chu is a great merit. My luck is really good. Fortunately, I was guarding the north gate. Moreover, it seems that the king-level expert has received the news. He didn't have time to mobilize the troops and rushed over." In his heart, this command horse rider had already found sufficient reasons for Chu Yang's actions. However, he couldn't be blamed for this. After all, Chu Yang hadn't changed his appearance at the moment. Instead, he had taken on the appearance of Jing Meng Hun. Therefore, the command horse rider had become suspicious even under such circumstances. It could only mean that this guy wanted to rebel. "All of you stay here and adjust your breathing. Be quick. I'll go in and take a look. Then, I'll get something to eat," Chu Yang said coldly. The command horse rider wanted to say that it would be better for his subordinate to do it for him. But, he didn't dare to say anything when he saw king-level expert Jing's grim and sinister face. King-level expert Jing's black robe fluttered as he entered the forest. The crowd outside looked on curiously. The command horse rider was furious and said, "Why aren't you adjusting your breathing and recovering your strength? The king-level expert personally went to look for food, you bastards." Everyone hurriedly agreed and sat down cross-legged, concentrating on regulating their breathing. After a short while, a wild boar's scream could be heard from the dense forest. A rustling sound was heard as king-level expert Jing flashed out of the jungle. He was carrying 2 large chunks of flesh on his shoulders. He was walking over in quick steps. With a bang, he threw 2 pieces of meat on the ground. They weighed at least 5 kilograms. "Roast this and eat it, quick," king-level expert Jing ordered in a resolute and decisive manner. "I have removed his internal organs and pulled out his bones. Do you know how to roast meat?" "Yes." "Thank you, king-level expert. King-level expert is very considerate towards us. How can we dare to accept this?" The command horse rider started to flatter him. "What nonsense are you talking about? I'll give you a quarter of an hour to roast it and eat it." King-level expert Jing flew into a rage. He fiercely glared at him. "Yes, yes." The command horse rider's face was covered in cold sweat. He thought that he was too stupid. The king-level expert was obviously on fire. He didn't like anyone. How could he listen to flattery at this time? He turned around and issued a series of orders. You, quickly go to the forest and look for firewood. You, use your swords to set up a rack. You must roast it and eat it in a quarter of an hour. You, go and separate the meat, quickly. Motherfucker, are you a fucking tortoise? After a series of orders, everyone started to get busy in full swing. These people were all experts. The weakest among them was a high-level martial great master. Their speed was very fast. The 2 pieces of meat were turned into pieces in the blink of an eye. There were a total of 103 pieces. Including Chu Yang, each person had a piece. The rarest thing was that other than Chu Yang's piece, the other pieces were of the same size. There was no deviation and it was extremely fair. More than 30 barbecue racks were also firmly fixed on the ground. Soon after, people came out of the forest carrying withered branches. They quickly put them down, and then rushed in like a gust of wind. Tap, 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 a slight sound was heard. This was the sound of flint being struck. Soon after, thick smoke started to rise. The sizzling sound of barbecuing meat was also heard. The aroma of charred meat wafted out. Many people found that the meat was very delicate. Moreover, the smell of it was very delicious. It didn't seem like the meat of a wild boar. However, they looked at the king-level expert's dark face. He was sitting on the side like a star of death. His cold face seemed to freeze everyone. Who would dare to fart? It was already good enough to eat meat. What's more, it was such delicious meat. If some ignorant person went up and asked, "King-level expert, this doesn't seem to be the meat of a wild boar," 80% of the people were sure that the king-level expert would immediately jump up and scold, "Eat it if you don't want to. Get lost if you don't want to eat." Then, he would issue an order, "If you don't want to eat it, then you are not hungry." Then, set off immediately. If that was the case, everyone would want to cry but have no tears. It didn't take long for everyone to return. The firewood they had was enough for 3 rounds. Everyone was like a lake, so there was no need for anyone to organize them. The 3 of them sat around the barbecue grill. Some of them were even trying their best to use their essence force to stimulate the flames, making them burn brighter and brighter. There was only a quarter of an hour. If the meat was not cooked by then, the king-level expert would not wait. He would probably leave the meat here after it was done. Everyone would leave by themselves. With the king-level expert's current irritation, he would definitely do such a thing. Therefore, everyone was very obedient. Even the command horse rider lowered his head and looked at the barbecue. He didn't dare to let out a fart. His face was so ugly that it seemed as if he could kill anyone at any time. However, he was secretly happy in his heart. He looked at the poisonous flood dragon's meat being cut into pieces and roasted on the fire. It was emitting an enticing fragrance. Many of the pieces had been roasted until they were yellow. The fat was sizzling out of the meat. It fell into the fire, and emitted an even more fragrant smell. This poisonous flood dragon's meat is a first-class poison in the world. There is no antidote. Moreover, no one can detect the poison in it. This is a fucking treasure. It's a pity that I lost 50 kilograms of it this time, Chu Yang thought in his heart. His face was gloomy. From time to time, he would glare fiercely at the crowd. Every time he glanced at them, many of them would shudder at the same time. So, they became more and more respectful towards each other. Is it not done yet? King-level expert Jing asked impatiently. It will be done soon. The command horse rider shivered. He almost put his hand into the fire as he hastily replied. Hurry up. King-level expert Jing said in a stiff and cold voice. Yes, yes. The command horse rider lowered his head. He tried his best to use his magic power to cook the meat, but the cold sweat on his forehead couldn't help but drip down. He was very worried. Would King-level expert Jing tear me apart if I had said one more word? King-level expert Jing is too scary. It's too frightening. It's no wonder that King-level Master Jing has been in a bad mood ever since King-level Master Kong was killed in battle, and King-level Master Jing was seriously injured and disabled. So, King-level Master Jing has been in a bad mood ever since. But, this is pardonable. I would have been more irritable than King-level expert Jing if I had been in his place. The enemy who killed my brother is standing in front of me. It would be strange if King-level expert Jing can still maintain his normal state of mind. He suddenly felt a strong fragrance coming from the 2 pieces of roasted meat in his hand. He was pleasantly surprised as he shouted, "The meat is done. The meat is done, I swear to God." This command horse rider had never felt so excited about a piece of roasted meat in his entire life. My side is also done. Our meat is also done. Everyone became excited. Many people swallowed their saliva as they greedily looked at the roasted meat in their hands. This meat is very good. It's very appetizing. It's a pity that there's too little of it. It's barely enough to fill my stomach, King-level expert. I'll give you the meat. The command horse rider politely walked over and placed the best piece of meat in front of King-level expert. This piece of roasted meat was very good. It was charred on the outside and yellow on the inside. The oil was still bubbling on the surface of the meat. It was emitting an enticing fragrance. Put it down. King-level expert Jing's voice seemed to have softened. The command horse rider was secretly happy. But, he heard King-level expert Jing roar again. What are you looking at? The meat is done. Why aren't you eating it? Do you want me to ask you to eat it? Everyone felt as if they had been granted amnesty as soon as these words were spoken. They grabbed the roasted meat in front of them, and took a bite. Many people cursed in their hearts. Fuck. Who dares to eat first if you don't speak? Motherfucker. It's a sin to wait for you to eat first. You're in a bad mood. You can't be such a bastard. The command horse rider also grabbed a piece of meat, and took a big bite. He suddenly felt an indescribable taste enter his throat. It was so fragrant that his whole body felt comfortable. His eyes couldn't help but brighten. He grabbed that piece of meat, and quickly swallowed it down. He threw the last bite into his mouth, and chewed it carefully. He couldn't bear to swallow it down. He sighed and said, "Such a wonderful roasted meat. Even if I die, I won't die in vain. Thank you, King-level expert." Chapter 338. The command horse rider nodded vigorously, and finally swallowed the meat, with a flattering smile on his face. He earnestly said, "King-level master, this is the best barbecue I've ever eaten in my life. No, including the other dishes, this is the best food I've ever eaten in my life." His voice was sincere. It was obvious that these words weren't flattery, they were sincere. Then, he saw King-level Master Jing smile strangely, and say, "I'm very pleased in that case." Then, the command horse rider suddenly felt that everything in front of his eyes had become somewhat blurry. He felt as if he was in a dream. His mind was in a daze. He even felt as if he had returned home. It was very warm, and very comfortable. Therefore, he slowly fell down with a smile on his face. Behind him, more than 100 people's bodies went limp, and they all wore comfortable smiles on their faces. Chu Yang calmly looked at more than 100 people slowly falling to the ground. They were lying on the ground in a disorderly manner. His eyes were ice cold. "Do I feel emotional? Yes. Do I feel sympathy? Not necessarily. Because my information has already been leaked, and these people will chase after my soul as long as my disguise lasts longer. They'll kill me for joy. There's no right or wrong in this world, there's no right or wrong. There are only different positions and different paths. There are only relatives and enemies, life and death. Chu Yang looked at the corpses on the ground. His eyes were ice cold. He insipidly said, "This is your path. And, it's also my path. We've chosen this path of Jianghu. And, this is our final destination. Today, it's you. Perhaps, it'll be me tomorrow. Therefore, I won't say sorry." 1. He was silent for a moment. Then, he walked to the side of the command horse rider, and took out Jing Menghun's identity token from his bosom. He stood still for about 2 breaths of time. Then, he turned around. Chu Yang cut open his wrist with a puff sound. His blood carried a strange orchid fragrance as it flowed out. The pain of his muscles being torn apart assaulted him like a tidal wave. Chu Yang's eyes were calm and his face was indifferent. He carefully smeared his blood drop by drop on the horse's body. Then, he picked up the long whip. More than 300 horses were whipped to flee in all directions by him, galloping in all directions. The fragrance of orchids spread out, becoming fainter and fainter on the ground. Chu Yang's complexion was cold and solemn. He pulled over the remaining warhorse, and jumped on it. Then, he clamped his legs together, and endured the dizziness brought about by the blood loss. He galloped towards the north without looking back. On the ground, corpses were scattered all over the place. The sound of the horses' hooves was like thunder, rolling away without looking back. My goal is clear. I'm heading north. Diwu Qingru, stop me if you have the ability. I, Chu Yang, will not beat around the bush with you. Because I'm running out of time. If I take a roundabout route in order to escape, then, that would be exactly what Diwu Qingru wants. I'm afraid that the war will break out before I can even return to Iron Cloud. Moreover, Diwu Qingru will try his best to take advantage of my absence and use all means to maximize the victory. Chu Yang couldn't bear the consequences. Therefore, even though he was already heavily injured, and could die at any moment, and even though he clearly knew that he would definitely die on this journey of 10,000 miles back, and that he might even die in the wilderness at any time, he still chose the shortest route, and used the fastest speed he could achieve to rush back as quickly as possible. Chu Yang knew that Diwu Qingru was aware of his plan. Therefore, Chu Yang also knew that this journey of 10,000 miles would be a matter of life and death for him. It was the best opportunity for Diwu Qingru to kill him. However, he had no other choice. The sound of the horses' hooves faded away. Jing Menghun's black robe fluttered in the wind as he frantically swept back and forth over the continent's citadel. He knew the serious consequences of King of Hell Chu's escape. He also knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Moreover, it was the key to the victory of the war between the two nations. Therefore, he was very careful. He even used his highest skill to search. He didn't let go of any nook and cranny. However, he didn't find anything. King of Hell Chu had been like a drop of water falling into the sea ever since he had left the Cheng Prime Minister's residence. There wasn't any movement from him. The Golden Horse Riders Department had mobilized a total of 250,000 soldiers to conduct a net-like investigation. They had combed through the entire province. However, there was no news. Jing Menghun had to admit that 2 hours had passed since he couldn't find the target along the way. All the orchids in every flower shop in the city had been thoroughly destroyed. This was enough to ensure that there was no smell of orchids in this huge continent city. King of Hell Chu could be found as long as the fragrance of orchids appeared. However, the fragrance of orchids didn't appear. Jing Menghun finally arrived at the north gate after a round of searching. He became furious when he saw the situation. What's going on? Who allowed you to open the gate? The officer guarding the gate had a strange reaction when he saw Jing Menghun arrive. He opened his mouth wide and stared as if he had seen a ghost. Jing Menghun angrily said, "What's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?" King Level Master. Jing. King Level Master Jing, you didn't go out of the city? The officer looked at Jing Meng-hun stutteringly, and scratched his head in confusion. King-level Master Jing had obviously led the people of Golden Horse Riders Department to chase after Chu Yang. How could he appear here alone? Could he be a spy? He recalled that King-level Master Jing had gone out with an imposing aura of magnificent army with thousands of men and horses, that tyrannical aura of swallowing rivers and mountains, that carefree and unrestrained manner of whizzing. The officer increasingly felt that the one who had gone out was the real one. He looked at Jing Meng-hun's anxious and angry face. What are you angry about? You're a spy. You're anxious because you have a guilty conscience. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this man was suspicious, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was a great opportunity for him. The officer suddenly became alert. He took 2 steps back. Then, he suddenly raised his hand and shouted, "Everyone, be on guard. Archers at the ready." Hundreds of big bows were loaded with iron arrows with a sure sound. The bowstrings creaked as they were drawn. The shiny arrowheads were aimed at Jing Meng-hun. Jing Meng-hun almost went mad with anger. He roared, "What are you doing? Do you want to rebel?" The officer stood proudly on the city wall and looked down at Jing Meng-hun. The corners of his mouth exposed a trace of a sneer as he said in a mocking tone, "Rebel? He. Capture this fake king-level Master Jing, for me." The last few words were spoken in a stern tone. A trace of fanaticism appeared in the officer's eyes. This fake king-level Master Jing is most likely King of Hell Chu. It would be wonderful if King of Hell Chu is captured by me. Ha ha ha. Promotion, riches, and titles of marquis and generals. The officer trembled with excitement as he thought of such a beautiful future. He was so happy that he almost fainted. The city gate was closed at the same time. The soldiers who were guarding the city gate quickly mounted their horses, and formed a huge arrowhead in an instant. Thousands of horses galloped towards Jing Meng-hun and rushed towards him. A team of infantrymen followed the cavalrymen under the command of their commanding officer. They dispersed and circled around to outflank Jing Meng-hun. The sound of the bugle horn was loud and clear. The soldiers surrounded Jing Meng-hun from all directions, and surged forward like a surging tide. They formed the most powerful fighting force in the shortest time possible. The infantrymen, cavalrymen, and archers formed a cross of firepower, and surrounded Jing Meng-hun. Great Zhao's army was ferocious and elite, and had displayed their ferociousness. However, the elite operation this time had targeted the wrong target. Jing Meng-hun was furious. He had never imagined that he would encounter such a situation when he had been searching for King of Hell Chu at the most important location of the northern city gate. This is absurd. He let out a loud shout. His black robe flashed, and he flew high into the air. The dense arrows hit his body, and issued puff sounds, and then bounced back. His skin was as hard as steel under the influence of his tyrannical king-level strength. Swords and spears couldn't penetrate his skin. His hands continuously stretched out, and grabbed a human body with bang sounds. He then threw it out. Jing Meng-hun was furious. But, he knew that this was a misunderstanding. Moreover, it was a crucial misunderstanding. Therefore, he was very careful in his actions. He would only throw people out. He wouldn't cause any casualties. He leaped like a whirlwind, and broke through the swords and spears that were standing in a forest. He then flew up to the top of the city wall with a loud shout. He then slapped his palms on the battlements, and jumped up, and landed in front of the officer with a sure sound. His big hands were like pliers as he grabbed the officer. The officer was startled. He was about to dodge, but Jing Meng-hun had already grabbed him. Jing Meng-hun got to know what had happened from the frightened officer after a quarter of an hour had passed. "I'm so angry." Jing Meng-hun was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He was so angry that the hair on his head stood erect. He then shouted, and lifted this guy up, and threw him down the city wall. A bright flower of blood appeared in front of the city gate with a puff sound. Jing Meng-hun didn't hesitate. He blew the special communication signal of the Golden Horse Riders Department. Then, he rolled out from the top of the city wall like a wisp of black smoke. However, he didn't notice that while he was raging, A figure had already flashed and disappeared outside the city. Jing Meng Hun was frantically galloping towards the north along the arches of his horse's hooves. He was unceasingly whistling in a high-pitched manner. Teams of experts of the Golden Horse Riders Department were gathering in the city. Then, they were gathering towards the northern gate from all directions. They were moving at an extremely fast speed. They were constantly galloping out of the city like lightning. People were shouting and horses were neighing. But they were moving in an orderly manner in this chaotic place. Nobody had spoken a word during the entire process. Chapter 339. Jing Meng Hun chased for half an hour. The mountain was in sight, and the forest was right in front of his eyes. Suddenly, his whole body shook. His eyes were lifeless as he stood on the spot. His mind suddenly became blank. Corpses were strewn all over the ground in front of him. They were the experts of the Golden Horse Riders Department who had been guarding the northern gate. 103 of them had died an unnatural death. The north gate was to guard against King of Hell Chu's escape. Therefore, Jing Meng Hun had arranged the best of the best. Moreover, they were all Jing Meng Hun's trusted subordinates. But now, these people were all dead. A black-clothed figure stood next to these corpses. Who is it? Jing Meng Hun felt as if his heart was being fried. He shouted and rushed forward. The black-clothed man held his hands behind his back and slowly turned around. His cold eyes looked at Jing Meng Hun's face. He coldly snorted and said, "It's me." Jing Meng Hun's rushing body suddenly stopped. He exclaimed, "Prime Minister?" It was Diwu Qingru. "They have left more than an hour ago." Diwu Qingru said quietly. "Left, then, they." Jing Meng Hun looked at his men lying on the ground. The muscles on his face twitched. Dead. They died peacefully. Diwu Qingru's voice was very strange. It was hard to tell whether it was pity or ridicule. He said, "In fact, they died happily. They willingly took the poison given to them by King of Hell Chu. Then, they died here with great satisfaction. There were no traces of fighting from beginning to end." How is this possible? Jing Meng Hun was stunned. He looked at the faces of the corpses. He saw that each of them had a faint smile on their faces. They looked very peaceful and satisfied. Looking at their faces, one would know that they were very happy. Very happy. However, they had lost their lives in such a happy place. Jing Meng Hun quivered and shuddered. He couldn't imagine how King of Hell Chu had done all this. More than 100 martial great masters and above. These were not 100 pigs. Even if King of Hell Chu had disguised himself, how could there be no flaws? Even if he didn't break, how could his life be so peaceful when he let more than 100 of his subordinates die by poison? Jing Meng Hun suddenly felt a chill run down his spine as he looked at the frozen smiles on the corpses' faces. Then, he smelled the faint orchid fragrance that seemed to be pervading in all directions. It should be a kind of strange poison. Diwu Qingru insipidly said, "A kind of strange meat." Diwu Qingru's voice had an indescribable flavor. It seemed as if he was deep in thought. Even with Diwu Qingru's knowledge, he couldn't tell what kind of poison it was. His heart couldn't help but tremble because he couldn't detect this poison. What if he ate it? Jing Meng Hun nodded blankly. His mind had yet to recover from the shock. King of Hell Chu smeared his blood on hundreds of horses, and then left. "There's orchid fragrance in all directions, no one is tracking you." Diwu Qingru shot a cold glance at Jing Meng Hun. "I don't need to tell you what to do next, do I?" Jing Meng Hun was startled. He regained his senses and replied, "Yes." Diwu Qingru coldly snorted and said, "Lock the entire northern frontier. Jing Meng Hun, bring your head to me if you can't catch King of Hell Chu." "Yes." Jing Meng Hun's heart sank. Diwu Qingru's words showed that he was very dissatisfied with him. King of Hell Chu is really vicious and merciless. You can even do it to yourself. Diwu Qingru slowly paced 2 steps. He raised his head and smelled the orchid fragrance that was drifting in the air. He shook his head and sneered, "It's strange that he could see through my spine-soul-breaking palm." But He didn't hesitate to injure himself in order to smear more than 100 horses to escape in all directions even though he was seriously injured. This is really bold. With such boldness, he is indeed a great threat. Diwu Qingru faintly smiled. He looked at the mountain forest, lost in thought for a while. Then, he smiled again. King of Hell Chu is seriously injured. And, he's bleeding himself. He's courting his own death. Jing Menghun's anger towards Chu Yang had reached its peak. He felt that he was in an embarrassing situation because of Chu Yang. So, he spoke without any trace of politeness. Put yourself in a situation of death and fight to live. Diwu Qingru sighed softly. His tone was slow as if he had recalled something. He then slowly said, "You need to be in a situation of death in order to live. You can't even believe that you can erupt with power. You can either sink or soar to the sky. If you don't force yourself into a situation of death, someone else will. You can still survive if you force yourself into a situation of death. But, if someone else forces you into it, you'll be consigned to eternal damnation." Diwu Qingru looked at the rain clouds floating above the mountain forest with a complicated look in his eyes. He spoke in a very disappointed and frustrated tone. After a long time, he smiled and said in a low voice, "So, you should force yourself into a situation of death before someone else has the time to force you into a situation of death. Force yourself as much as you can. The worst result is nothing more than death. But, it's much easier to die in one's own hands than in someone else's hands." Diwu Qingru sighed softly. He suddenly turned his head to look at Jing Menghun. His tone suddenly became gentle and even a little regretful. "Meng Gui, you're forcing yourself too much. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a mere king-level expert with your achievements." Jing Menghun stood there in a daze as he listened to these words. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Yes, he had reached the level of a king-level expert over the years. But, he hadn't dared to enter the lower heavens. Because he knew that there were countless king-level experts in the lower three heavens. He was merely a king-level expert. He could be called a king in the lower three heavens. But, he could only be recruited in the lower three heavens. He would be consigned to eternal damnation if he said something wrong and offended a certain force. Therefore, he would rather stay in the lower three heavens. He would rather enjoy the extravagant lifestyle of the secular world. But, he didn't dare to take the next step. It wasn't that he couldn't break through to a king-level expert. It was just that he couldn't. It was because he was full of fear towards that strange world. His cultivation hadn't made any progress in the past 10 years because of this mentality. The spiritual energy of spirit beasts needed to break through the king-level expert and enter the emperor-level expert had to be obtained in the Kanglan battlefront. He couldn't go there. So, he couldn't get it. This cycle repeated itself. His current embarrassing situation was actually due to his own cowardice. Where had he thrown away the fearless desperado spirit that he had before breaking through to the king-level expert? Why had he become a coward? Could it be that he had become a coward at the time of a breakthrough? Jing Menghun couldn't help but sweat profusely as he thought of this. But, he was still afraid of entering the lower three heavens even though he was aware of this. Jing Menghun would never be willing to abandon everything and enter the lower three heavens if he was asked to do so. It was easy to know, but difficult to do. This was the truth. Taking a step forward would mean that the sky was high and the earth was wide. But, if he didn't take this step, he would still be as wide as the sea and the sky. This was a kind of mentality. And, this kind of mentality was very strange. But, it was very difficult to understand. It was just like in modern times. Some bosses would go all out when they didn't have anything. They would build a family business with their bare hands. They would only need the courage to take the next step. And, they would be able to get listed on the stock market. Or, they could achieve greater development. But, countless people would shrink back at this critical time. Less than 1 in 1,000 people would dare to take this step. It was because they were thinking, "I'm already famous. Why should I take such a big risk? I would be consigned to eternal damnation in case I fail. And, I would return to poverty once again." Only a few people would be able to succeed even if they dared to take this step. The winner would laugh proudly in the clouds. And the loser would return to poverty. It would be very difficult for a person to take this step even if he were to worry about personal gains and losses for a long time. It was because of his mentality. He wouldn't be able to forge ahead if he was worried about personal gains and losses. Therefore, there would always be a small number of powerhouses in any world and any time. This was the case whether it was in the martial way or in the business world. This couldn't be changed since ancient times. Diwu Qingru had been carefully observing Jing Menghun's demeanor. He finally sighed and said, "The reason why King of Helchu is King of Helchu isn't because of his high wisdom. Rather, it's because he has been struggling on the verge of death since his debut. Therefore, he has been able to create one miracle after another. Such miracles aren't due to King of Helchu's strength. Rather, it's because he was forced to step on the road of death. He forced a genius out of a hopeless situation. The times create heroes. This is how it is. Meng Hun, you've disappointed me." Diwu Qingru sighed after he finished speaking. Then, his body floated away like the wind. He disappeared from this world in the blink of an eye. The sound of horse hooves thundered in the distance. The people of the Golden Horse Riders Department rushed over like a swarm of bees. Jing Menghun stood there in a daze. He didn't move for a long time. Diwu Qingru had already gone far away. Diwu Qingru had been looking forward to Jing Menghun. Jing Menghun's martial arts were profound, and he was proficient in medicine. Moreover, he was still young. But he had already achieved so much. He could be regarded as a genius of the Chongtian continent. There were many younger people in the upper three heavens who had more achievements than Jing Menghun. But one must know that this was the upper three heavens. It couldn't be compared to the lower three heavens. Jing Menghun's achievements in the barren lower three heavens were something to be proud of. No one in the upper three heavens would dare to ignore such an achievement. Therefore, Diwu Qingru had been looking forward to Jing Menghun breaking through his heart's devil. He would have to leave the lower three heavens after this battle. It didn't matter if he won or lost. He would have taken Jing Menghun with him if he had untied the knot in his heart. He would have given Jing Menghun a bright future. He would have become an emperor-level expert in the shortest time possible. However, Diwu Qingru had pointed out Jing Menghun's heart's devil. And Jing Menghun had finally lost his mind. He had talent, luck, perseverance, and opportunity. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.